Ceremonies today is no stranger to the Leadership Conference. He expertly guided our 12th annual gathering 2 years ago. Commissioner Sean Landris was appointed to the commission in 2013. He brings to the group more than 2 decades of experience in academic, nonprofit, and philanthropic leadership. Dr. Landris is a subject matter expert in organizational development and network building. He holds degrees from Columbia University, the University of Oxford, and the University of California at Santa Barbara, where he earned a PhD in religious studies. Landris chairs the Commission's Productivity Investment Fund and sits on the Leadership Conference and Strategic Learning Committees. Please join me in a warm welcome for Commissioner Sean Landris.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back. Thank you, Victoria. For another year of the Quality and Productivity Commission's County Leadership Conference, we are thrilled you are here this morning, and I am really looking forward to what is certain to be an enlightening and informative leadership conference. But practical things first. Coffee, fruit, and other refreshments will be available throughout the morning, so please help yourself. And if there was coffee and refreshments there, and they're on the other side as well. We will be going straight through, so we will self-break today. The restrooms are outside the doors to the left. And if you have not done so, please pick up a parking validation at the registration table. So, we talked about social media before. In fact, how many of you were here or maybe even tweeted for the first time when we did our social media leadership conference? Raise your hand. A few of you. I think I saw a few hands. So, are you ready to tweet again? All right. Here are our hashtags. Hashtag QPCLC 2016, QPC Leadership Conference 2016, and hashtag LA County. And I'll do my best to retweet you as we go. You also should have no trouble getting onto the Wi-Fi system here at the Music Center. And again, whether you're using Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or something we haven't heard of yet, Snapchat, anyone? Okay. Please use hashtag LA County and QPCLC 2016. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our commission chair, Rod Gibson. Dr. Rod Gibson joined the Quality and Productivity Commission after an illustrious career in the aerospace industry. He spent 32 years with the Aerospace Corporation, retiring as Senior Vice President of System Planning and Engineering. Commissioner Gibson has consulted on development and applications for commercial satellites for the Department of Defense. He earned a PhD in chemical engineering from the other UC down the road, that is UCLA. Bruins? Clap. Any Bruins in the house? All right. And he also served as a captain in the U.S. Army. And I believe Commissioner Gibson received the 50th anniversary pin from the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs just a few weeks ago as we acknowledged this milestone anniversary from the Vietnam War. So thank you for your service. Commissioner Gibson is serving his second term as chair of the Quality and Productivity Commission, so please join me in welcoming Commissioner Rod Gibson.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 14th Annual Leadership Conference, jointly sponsored by the Quality and Productivity Commission, the Board of Supervisors, and the Chief Executive Office. Connectivity to productivity is our theme. Our speakers will discuss how they are increasing productivity by connecting through vision, planning, and action. Collaboration improves government decision-making and the quality of public services. The Commission uses forums such as the Leadership Conference to share best practices with the county leaders. Information shared at these gatherings help to improve the quality of services for county residents. I'd like to acknowledge our committee this year. I'm going to ask each member to stand if you'd hold your applause. It takes teamwork to pull off something like this conference. So first is Commissioner Jackie Bacharach, who served as the chair this year of our leadership committee. Thank you, Jackie, for a great job. Commissioners Ed McIntyre, who was last year's chair, Evelyn Gutierrez, Jacqueline Tilly Hill, Charles Backley Jr., and Sean Landris, who of course is our Master of Ceremonies. Thank you, committee, for a terrific job. There are additional members of our commission here today. I would like them just to stand and we'll acknowledge them together. So will the other commissioners please stand? Thank you very much. These are dedicated men and women who volunteer their time to help the county carry out its mission to enrich lives through effective and caring services. Thank you, commissioners, for your time, and you devote that time to ensuring the success of QPC programs and activities. I would be remiss if I didn't thank our staff. The commission staff is just wonderful, and they've been so loyal and worked so hard throughout this year. We value their constant enthusiasm and hard work, without which we would not have the conference. Victoria, she's standing. Laura is at the table unless she's come in here. And Mary Savignon is here as well. So let's applaud our staff. They're terrific. It seems like a small number, but let me tell you, they work really hard. We will begin today's conference with words of inspiration from Rabbi Noah Farkas of Valley Beth Shalom. Rabbi Farkas is also a member of the Homeless Services Authority. Afterwards, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Herb Lane Jr., a U.S. Navy veteran who also served in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the invocation, and Rabbi Farkas, the podium is yours.
Good morning, everyone. It's not lost on me that we are meeting in a music center. Edgar Allan Poe, who was a famed American writer, said that symphonic music was the highest form of art. It's because you take 100 individuals who are highly skilled in a very particular thing and you put them together in a room for a short period of time and they make beautiful music together. Now, it's not lost on me because what makes symphonic music so beautiful is not just the skill of the physician or the musician, but the ability to listen. When you sit and you play clarinet and you hear the violin across the room, it's not just the notes that matters, it's the empathy, the music, the emotion behind those quarter notes and eighth notes that you pull into yourself and draw yourself into their music as they draw themselves into yours. And that is what makes music more than a mechanistic environment, but a true art form. We're here this morning to talk about being connected to each other in the greatest music hall that we have. We're here to listen to each other, not just for the reports that you might be giving or the databases you're trying to push around or budgets you're trying to get to the finish line, which we all know take hours and hours of work and, as Herculean of skill as playing the violin, but we also know that we're here because when we listen to each other, it's when we collaborate with each other, governance isn't just a machine anymore. It itself can become a beautiful form of art. And the consequences of not connected to each other are dire, though. To you, it might be a budget or a spreadsheet, but out there, outside these walls, it means someone who's formerly incarcerated not feeling connected to the world because they got turned down for a job just because they're formally convicted of a crime, or the mom with 2 kids who lives in a van in the parking lot who is just looking for a little bit of help and is feeling so disconnected from the world around them because people just drive by them every day without even looking at them, or those who are have other types of differences that can't access buildings, can't access services, and they just feel so separated. It's that separation that draws us apart, and it's that connection that draws us together. And if life is anything, it can be a symphony. And so let's take a moment, reach inside ourselves, and look for that spirit of connectivity. Take a moment to pray with me, if you will. Creator of the world, author of life and liberty, composer of the music of life, open our ears to each other, open our hearts to each other, open our eyes to each other, so that we may make your music even more beautiful in this world, to enrich the lives of those who live in the beautiful Southland we call home, and to make this county and to make this place the place that we all dream it to be, and the place that we know you dream it to be. And together we say, Amen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Face the flag. Place your right hand over your heart. Veterans, feel free to salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Rabbi Farkas. Thank you, Mr. Lane. And now we will turn to a special guest we have with us this morning. I would like to introduce our county assessor, Jeff Prang, who has joined us this morning. Please come up. I know you've become a regular now at our leadership conferences, and so I wanted to acknowledge your presence here and thank you for joining us and invite you to say a few words if you like.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I know what you're all probably thinking. It's time to liven this party up with a speech from the county property tax assessor. I get that all the time. Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. It's great to be here with members of my senior staff. This is a very important conference, and I'm happy to participate. I just had a couple thoughts I wanted to share. One was, over the years, as I've developed my own leadership philosophy, there's a quote that I always liked. It was from former President Woodrow Wilson. He said, "I need all the brains I have and all I can borrow." And sometimes I'll tell my staff, I said, I always want to make sure I'm the dumbest one in the room, because we want good decisions being made on behalf of the people that we serve. But the Quality and Productivity Commission is such a vital component of the county, and part of what we as leaders need to avail ourselves to ensure the good operations of our department. We don't have all the answers, and all of us know that in government sometimes we get into ruts. We do things the way they've always been done. But being able to develop a partnership with with organizations, with individuals like the Productivity and Quality Productivity Commission, we get a chance to have somebody else take a look at what we're doing to provide us advice, guidance, help us look at our operations, at our philosophy of governance with a fresh set of eyes. So the commission's going to be coming and visiting with our office, I think, in a month or two. It is something that I invite, that I look forward to. I'm hoping that they will have lots of good insights and criticisms that will help us to ensure that the direction that we are taking the department is the right one. And I'm just really proud to be part of an organization, the County of Los Angeles, which values this type of input and participation to make sure that my department, as well as all of our departments, are the best that they could possibly be. So thank you very much for that, the kind introduction, for the opportunity to be here with you this morning, and I hope you all will get as much out of this this morning as I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assessor Jeff Prang. And we're very much looking forward to our visit to the Assessor's office. I believe it's coming up next month. As all of you know, the Quality and Productivity Commission makes biennial visits to every single department and a few units in the county. It's really, well, it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, actually. At least for me, it was as a new commissioner. But it's a wonderful opportunity to get to know the extraordinary work that you all are doing, and to bring to bear the perspectives that different commissioners, we have 17 of them that our commissioners have on the work that the county does. It's not easy. It's not always the most inspiring work. And it is not always the kind of work that gets the results that we want it to get despite our best efforts. But I really resonated with what Rabbi Farkas said to us, that if we listen to one another, and I think that's what happens in every department every day, and what happens in meetings like these, and what happens in our department visits, if we listen every day, we actually can make some pretty good music together. Sometimes it's a classical set piece, and more frequently it might be a little jazz improvisation. So with that, I want to thank the assessor again, and we will move on to our opening speaker. Now, connectivity to productivity is our theme. And we can think of a number of perspectives with which to look at that. But one perspective is local government innovation, with which, of course, about which we are all quite passionate. And in addition to counties around the United States, there are, of course, cities. And in 2014, Bloomberg Philanthropies, led by former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg, challenged local governments, by which he meant cities, to find innovative solutions to improving the quality of city services. Long Beach, the city of Long Beach, the second largest city in Los Angeles County, submitted a proposal that was approved for funding. And around this time last year, Long Beach Mayor Robert Garcia, do we have any Long Beach folks in the house? I suspect we do. I know at least one very well. Any others? Long Beach in the house? All right. So Long Beach Mayor Robert Garcia announced the formation of his Innovation Delivery Team, or I-Team, with funding from Bloomberg Philanthropies. They were charged with developing proposals to stimulate growth, create jobs, and, you might have heard this one before, use open source technology to improve city services. So John Keisler was, at the time, Chief Financial Officer for the Long Beach Police Department, and he was tapped to become the new Innovation Director. John previously managed the city's Animal Care Services Department and was the business operations manager for the Parks, Recreation, and Marine Department. With a staff of 7, he and his team took on economic development. What new approaches has the team identified to stimulate the local economy? What are some of the lessons learned? Well, I want to say that Commissioner Bachrach and Commissioner Liu, who is here as well, and I had the opportunity to hear John Keisler speak at a conference last October, and we were really struck by the clarity of his approach, by the creativity of his thinking, and by the generosity of spirit with which he approaches his approach to connectivity and productivity. And so if these questions are questions you share, let's hear directly from him, John Keisler, Innovation Director for the City of Long Beach.
Well, good morning. Good morning. There's not much better or more we could ask for than this view from the 5th floor of the Music Center and looking down at the park towards City Hall. What an incredible development we've seen over the last few years in Los Angeles to provide places where people can connect, to try and improve connectivity, to try and improve thank you very much. Try and improve the places where people can come together. Sean asked me to talk a little bit about this process of getting from visioning to planning. And this is a fun place to be, visioning. It's oftentimes it's forward thinking, it's creative, but it sometimes can be difficult to get from those big ideas, the horizon that we're looking at, the perfect vacation that we imagine for our families, to actually make that happen. And so I'm going to talk just a little bit about this theme of visioning to planning and give you a few strategies that we're exploring, that we're experimenting with in government and City Hall to see if we can move our vision for the city of Long Beach forward in a meaningful and productive way. So I wanted to first start with the definition of vision. And this is our working definition of vision this morning. Vision is what the world looks like as a result of all this effort. Vision is if you could, we put all these resources, all this energy, all this effort into our work, but what does the world look like as a result of all that? And beyond, the rabbi was speaking about the budgets and the spreadsheets and the data that we use to measure success. To what end? What does it look like as a result of all our effort? And if you can imagine, I'm gonna use the boat analogy. I'm gonna talk about eggs today. I'm trying to leave you with a few images to keep in mind. But if you can kind of imagine, I think it was John Adams. He had talked a lot about this boat. That vision. We're on this boat, and the vision is this destination that we're headed toward. The vision itself creates this inspiration, the energy, the wind in our sails that moves the boat. And our planning, what I'll talk about in a second, is more like the steering wheel. It's the stuff that we need to move the boat. But vision is long-term. It's something we can't see, the people around us can't see necessarily. Oftentimes people think we're nuts if we really have vision. It's kind of scary sometimes to talk to our managers and our colleagues about this aspirational vision that we might have years out because of all the challenges and the reality, the pragmatic obstacles and issues we need to deal with in the short term. So vision is forward thinking. It's not the world as it is. It's how the world could or should be. Vision's, it's very creative. It's not what we see, and I don't mean in the ocean in this picture, but what we can't see, the stuff that's out there on the other side of all this work. And it really, we have to start with this notion that you're in the positions you are because the community, the crew on your ship, they can't see the vision. They don't know where this exploration, all this hard work is going to end up. But the great visionaries of our time have seen things that even their own teams can't see. And that's uncomfortable. That's the pit in your stomach, the anxiety you feel, because something is out there, you can see it, but nobody else can. And on a day-to-day basis, guess what? You're not going to get a whole lot of support for your vision. If they can't see it, it's hard for them to trust and get behind it. So that's one of the challenges that we face as leaders in terms of communicating and painting that picture of what that world looks like at the other end of our work and our effort. So the importance of vision. Now, we talk about having vision a lot, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about what it actually can do for us. So I mentioned that it's more than just this destination. It's not just this place we're trying to get to, because we're going to get someplace regardless of our effort, good or bad. And we're going to be in a place, good or bad, regardless of our effort. It provides the drive. So think about that that John Adams quote about how it's that wind that pushes the sails. It's the inspiration, the energy. The vision is what we're moving to. It motivates our effort. It pushes our boat along. But it also provides the discipline. And I think that this is probably where vision gets sort of underestimated. Discipline is doing the hard things, the things that we don't have to do, but we do on a day-to-day basis, given all the choices we have, the things we could eat, the things we could drink, the places we could go, and how we spend our time. We're willing to give those up in the short term to get to a vision, to a place that we know exists on the other end of all this work. And whether it's talking to a student in a classroom about becoming a doctor and studying harder and giving up time with their friends maybe to do some extra homework, or a child on your baseball team who wants to be a professional baseball player someday, they're willing to do those extra hours in the cages, those extra sit-ups and sprints, because there's a vision that is behind all that work. They almost don't notice the work that they're doing because it's getting them toward this goal that they have for themselves, this vision of the world. So discipline is one thing that I think is really important, and it's really important for us to emphasize that change, progress, all of these things, tough choices requires very uncomfortable day-to-day work, but the vision can help our team, our crew, to keep cleaning that boat and keeping it upright. It also, allows us to have hope, when the ocean's rough. And I can imagine that there were many explorers out there who their crews many times doubted their vision and where they were going. And when the waves are high and the storm is overhead, when the food rations are low and no land in sight, imagine what kind of fortitude and hope that people must have to work through those difficult times. And we see public policy issues like that around us. There's some major issues that we read about and we see firsthand, face to face. And as much as we all in this room over the last 10 and 20 years through our careers in public policy and public administration and governance, as much as we know about how the government works, we still don't know how to solve some of these problems that we interact with face to face on a day-to-day basis. And so, the idea that there is a vision that we're working toward, and no matter what it takes, we're going to change that reality, can sometimes help us to maintain that hope and that wind, that energy that pushes those sails. So shifting a little bit now from vision to planning, we talked a little bit about what vision is, what it can do for us, which I think is important because it needs to be practical and pragmatic for a quality and productivity meeting. But the planning process is where we get into the how-to. So I wanted to just start with a definition that planning is how we steer this boat. And planning is also how we chart our course. So ultimately, I'm going to leave this metaphor for you in terms of vision and planning with a map, with a roadmap, and it provides us with direction. Now that direction changes. So I'm going to emphasize that having good vision 10, 25 years out is a good thing, but we have to recognize that as we move along in our journey and we're mapping this progress through our planning process, that the vision will continue to change as the environment around us, as we turn a new corner, as we sail around a new horizon. And ultimately, the vision will also change and adjust. And I'm going to give you some examples of some really bad visions that needed to change. So the planning process is the roadmap, and I think it's really critical that we have an understanding. Planning for planning's sake is a lot of energy and worthless time if we don't have a strong vision. But planning also is critical for our people. It's critical for communication, this how to get there thing, and this willingness to adjust that map as we have new realizations and move further along toward our vision. Planning is critical because it also talks about resources. What kind of boat, what kinds of things do we need to adjustments do we need to make? Sometimes we need sails, sometimes we need rows. And sometimes people are going to have to get out there, row, and they're going to have to push the boat. Sometimes the wind will do it for us. And there are macro factors in our environments that do that, that push issues in one direction, and sometimes we have to do the pushing. But having a plan and using a plan that covers the roadmap, the resources that are needed, planning also can be the steering wheel. And the data, which I think is critical, the ability to measure progress, using your roadmap to show your team, your crew, how you're moving from place to the next place, and showing progress, and also showing where progress has not been made, is really critical to taking out the emotion, to taking out some of the oral tradition that we are inundated with on a day-to-day basis by people who don't necessarily see where we're going. So planning establishes those points which we need. It helps us to find out where those ports are that we might need to anchor and reprovision. It might help us to understand that, hey, we just did a pilot or a prototype and we need to go back to port. This was the wrong direction. But that roadmap will help us get back. It'll reinforce with our staff that we know where we are on the map in relation to our vision. So with that, I'm going to put to bed the whole boat metaphor, and so you don't have to worry about that anymore. But what I want to shift to is now to mix up some metaphors, something that I think will help as entertaining. We're going to move to the egg, and we're going to talk about chickens and eggs now. So I want you to think about vision for your world. And in the county of Los Angeles, largest county in the country, 10.2 million people, just an incredible opportunity for good. But what's your vision for the county? And I would like for you to think of that vision. It's inside the egg, and I'd like for you to think that there's a lot of eggs in chairs around the room. That vision beyond just the department's mission. I want you to think about the vision that you're working toward, not just the day-to-day, the year-to-year performance metrics that we're trying to achieve. What are we spending our time on a day-to-day basis? And is it really helping to hatch that egg, to provide the environment where that vision inside that egg can survive and grow and ultimately hatch and to come out? Because that's where life will begin, when we can see that vision hatch from the inside out of our organizations. And having that conversation, what are those eggs that are inside your department that some of them are getting crushed, some of them maybe we're doing a good job to incubate and support. But start thinking about that and as we go into this next phase of the talk. So Sean asked me to talk about vision and planning, and I thought it wasn't fair to say a little bit about what we're trying to do in the city of Long Beach. So in Long Beach, we're really talking a lot about opportunity and Long Beach being a city of opportunity, that vision. And that vision is very abstract. What does that mean? Well, it depends on who, and it depends on what the issue, and it depends on what opportunities that they're looking for. But in our opinion, we should be a place as a city where people come to live out and achieve their American dream, where people may, in a very diverse city like Long Beach, one of the most diverse in the nation, there's a lot of different hopes and dreams in the way that people interpret success and their vision for their family and their community. And so we really want to be the place where anybody with any type of vision can come and find the support, the resources, and the opportunity to live their American dream. And government, what are we? We're the facilitator. We should be the incubator of that vision. And so for us, opportunity, the planning piece, comes through connectivity. And I laughed when I saw Sean's, the title of the session, because of this conference, because truly opportunity in our initial research is coming through connectivity to resources, to information, to support, to other people. And so our goal is to become the city of opportunity, connecting our city, by connecting our communities, by connecting people with each other. And so the innovation team is charged with how we can move our city with this vision of opportunity toward that reality through connectivity. And it's connecting our systems, it's connecting our infrastructure, it's connecting our people, it's connecting our entrepreneurs, it's connecting our university and our city college and our K-12 system. It's connecting healthcare and transportation and mobility. And so we're really looking at this analogy, and I'm going to throw another metaphor in there, unfortunately, but if government is doing its job, ultimately it's connecting people with each other and providing an environment where they're connected to opportunity. And so that brain there, hopefully, is reflective of the city of Long Beach and the government at some point, that we have connected infrastructure and vehicles that move people and services that move people. We've connected the people to the government, to the services, to the infrastructure, and that there's this nervous system, that the city becomes a nervous system that is connected with each other from the fingers to the brain. And when we have a hot spot, those nerve endings tell us that the body needs to adjust, that the city needs to adjust and change, whether it's in a service or if it's in the infrastructure. And I haven't seen a city with this sort of metaphor out there yet, that the city truly is a nervous system. And the technology that's evolving, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that, the technology that's evolving allows us to do this in new ways, to animate our cities in a way that we never have before, actually in a pretty efficient way, whether it's through sensor technology, monitoring the air quality, or if it's camera technology or infrared. We're able to monitor and feel what's going on in the city in ways that we never could before across the physical, the built, and the human environmental aspects of our city, just like a body. So that's a little bit about Long Beach, but nationally, what's also happening, which I think is an important part of this, from visioning to planning, is that there's also something to be learned by this innovation, government innovation movement that's going on. And so Sean mentioned real quick about what is going on with Bloomberg Philanthropies and civic innovation that's happening in a lot of different places, but I'm just going to give you one example. The thing that Sean didn't tell you is the process by which. So the vision is obviously the civic innovation and innovation in city halls, but how do we do it? How do we get the piece? Bloomberg Philanthropies has done something that I think is really interesting, is that they've adopted an incubation model that is very, very prevalent in the private sector and even in the academic research world. But we don't often think of city halls or cities as incubators for innovation. And when we think about the egg, those ideas, incubation is a really good analogy. And structurally, these Bloomberg cities, these Bloomberg Innovation Grants, seek to create civic innovation incubators in cities around the world. And then in 2011, there were 5 initial cities, and they were essentially given seed capital to hire teams. They were given a process, which is called the innovation delivery approach, and they were given coaching and networking and access connectivity to the innovation ecosystem across the world. And that is very similar in my analysis of what has been going on for a long time in research and academia in the private sector, but we don't always in government look at how we're approaching innovation, performance, and change in City Hall or in the County Hall of Administration. And so I think there's something to be learned about in this experiment that we're doing in Long Beach. We're doing it in 19 cities. We're doing it in the city of Los Angeles as well. And to look at how are we, what kind of success we have, how are we creating incubators for innovation within our own organizations, within our own cities and counties. And so I'm going to give you some quick examples of the actual strategies or tools, because remember, we're trying to go from visioning to planning. From planning, what are the pieces, what are the components that we need to actually implement this plan? And so in front of, I think you have it in your handouts, but this is a very familiar diagram, a real familiar graphic in the art world, in the art and design world. And one of the strategies that is being pushed in incubators, whether it's the development of products and services or goods for commercialization, or now in city halls, is this strategy of using a design thinking approach. And I had, just to be honest, I was a public administration student at USC, and I was a teacher before that. I'd never heard of design thinking in this sense. And I'd never thought about how we could apply a concept or a framework from the art and industrial design world to public policy. But what's interesting about this is in design thinking, it all begins with the user's experience. And I'll show you some strategies around that, but it's about empathizing with the actual customer or user of our services. And typically, at least in my experience, we in Long Beach would do a survey, we'd do some community meetings, we called it outreach or engagement, but by and large, we were just trying to get a sense of what the majority of people thought or wanted or thought were important. This design thinking process is much, much different. And it begins with empathizing and understanding an individual user's experience. And it moves through this construct or the point of view, identifying insights from that very individual experience, and then identifying other user domains and really being able to understand that experience for that individual user. In terms of user experience, I took the actual person's picture off this and put mine on, so I apologize. This is not about me. But this would be an example of personification. We are now using the strategies that are very common in the art and design world of personification, and not a day goes by that I don't see a persona or have my staff present me a persona of a user case or a use case. And now what we're starting to see too is a shift within City Hall in terms of the discussion. The data is extremely important, the survey data, but we're very interested in what the individual user, who's actually going to be affected or using the solution that we're recommending. So let's begin with understanding the 5 different use cases around that particular policy. Let's understand what the real people, actual people, are experiencing on a day-to-day basis. Let's spend a day with them. Let's observe their behavior, because they may not even be able to articulate what the challenges are that they're facing. But through an ethnocentric user experience research method, using design thinking, we can walk around in their shoes, we can observe their environment, and we can identify gaps or obstacles that they might not even realize are in their way from getting to that dream, that vision that they have for themselves. So it's really using personification, using this design thinking method. It's shifting the way that we look at the problems that are being faced by our customers, our users, our communities on a day-to-day basis. The other thing about it is about focusing small. It's starting small. And traditionally, I'm really good as the CFO for the police department. I'm terrified of violating a competitive bidding process. And so, for years I've been focused on how do we run a really good process around the development of specifications that's defensible, and that in many cases we don't ever actually talk to any of the users. We don't talk to any of the potential vendors, because that could corrupt the process, right? It could overly influence or create a conflict of interest. So this process has been very uncomfortable for me, but what it's also allowed us to do is, instead of doing big deals, big projects and big solutions, we've started with really, really tiny solutions and really, really tiny interventions that allow us to quickly, rapidly prototype a solution, to get rid of it, to move on if it works, move on if it doesn't work, and then to grow, building our way up to policy change, rather than starting with policy change and then trying to find the people who actually need it. So it's been a very, very different approach. I'm not going to tell you today that it's the right approach. I think that your approach is going to depend on your issue, but I wanted to give you some examples of the strategies that we're using with this regard to civic innovation and this process of going from visioning to planning to implementation. The other thing that has been sort of a mind blower, and I'm kind of giving you some of the examples of the things that a year ago I just didn't do. The example is what we call looking at extreme cases, and in the design world, this is a very common theme. IDEO and others push this, Nesta and these groups from around the world that are very good at this. But the idea is that we don't just use, this is kind of a Madisonian thing, the tyranny of the majority. Oftentimes we'll look at survey data, we'll look at what does the majority say? And we'll go to our commissioners or our board of supervisors or our city councils and we'll say, well, you know what? We're recommending this course because the majority of people say that this is what they need. This is what the city should do. And that has been a safe place for us for a long time because it helps to sort of blunt this criticism that we're catering to a political solution rather than one that, you know, from a utilitarian perspective, that's really easy to defend. 75% say that this is good. But what about the disparities? What about the disconnected communities? What about the real problems that we were talking about that we face? The rabbi was talking about that van. What about the groups that, A, don't show up on surveys by and large, and B, really served by the solution for the majority? In fact, they're the ones that have fallen out of the majority for a reason. So in the design thinking world, we have been really pushed, and this is very uncomfortable for us, but we've been doing this over the last year, is to look for extreme cases and to develop insights about the extreme and the minority rather than the majority. Now, it's supposed to not drive 100% of what we do, but it's supposed to influence it, and we're supposed to balance out the initiatives that we're embarking on with both those solutions or those initiatives that meet a general and broad-based need. So, you know, here's building your infrastructure for the most common cases, but we also must go after those extreme cases, and we must understand what it's like for the person who's outside that survey data. And that's where your personification comes in handy. That's where your strategies around design thinking and forcing your staff to do empathy sprints, which means go out and actually use our process. Go out and actually observe what it's like on Anaheim in Long Beach for a business owner. And you know what? If we can address in the private sector, we've heard this too from some of our consultants that we've worked with and some of the groups at the art college at Cal State Long Beach, the designers, the artists, they say, you know what? What's interesting is that sometimes when we develop a solution for the extreme case, all of a sudden we start finding applications for the broad majority in the middle. And that it actually becomes a big solution. It starts small and it addresses one of these extreme cases on the left or the right of the spectrum. And suddenly we find that the majority in the middle actually has an application for that too. And I think we've seen some defense technology, we've seen some technology solutions. I mean, when I first saw people walking around with iPhones, I thought, that's nuts. I don't need to play music on my phone. Now I can't go anywhere without it. And it's interesting because sometimes those crazy, crazy extreme cases, those people who are out there looking at the future, they have some insights that might apply to the majority of people that we serve. The other thing that is very important then, so that this doesn't sound like I'm just pushing this very, very soft sort of, you know, user case agenda. This is just for the artists. This is not true. The artists are actually interesting, and the more that we spent time with Design Matters, which is up at Pasadena Art Center, one of the best in the world. We have a fellow on our staff that rotates every 3 or 4 months. I actually highly recommend that in your organizations to bring on a partnership with an art college or a design school. They are hungry for real-world, pragmatic challenges, and they have been incredible. At Cal State Long Beach, we've had an ongoing partnership. Design Matters up at Pasadena Art Center. They have been incredible partners, and they have really forced our thinking about solution design or service design. But they're also very, very interested in data. And Bloomberg Philanthropies, Innovation Delivery, the private markets, when they're developing solutions, they also want to know what the market looks like, and they want to make good decisions, just like we do. And so it needs to be data-driven. I do recommend that while you're doing some of your ethnocentric or your user design type research process, that you also have a data analysis. You also have an analyst that's working to really pull together the data that matters and to quantify your challenges, because this is where you're going to need on the back end the hard evidence that can, in some cases, just take the emotion out of it. In some cases, it's that roadmap that your staff can actually see. You know how much you love when you're sitting on the freeway to watch your little blue bubble move, and you're so disappointed when it's not moving. Well, that's why data is important. I mean, it seems silly, but it's both an intuitive and an intellectual thing, that there's something important about seeing if our strategy is working, testing that solution against a user's experience as well as being able to quantify that change. And so we're spending a lot of time, we have a data analyst on our team, so does the LA team, and that when it comes down to it, we are still forcing ourselves to establish measures and targets. And while I'm a believer, huge believer, in managing to trends rather than targets, targets are really important to different audiences as well. And so I don't want you to think, this innovation thing is just about the design thinking. The design thinking has to be supported as well by the data. And the other thing about establishing a shared outcome is that groups who normally wouldn't work together, if they agree that there's an outcome that they all support, they may be willing to do some stuff that's uncomfortable for them. They will not do it because they like you. Generally, they won't do it because they like government. But what they will do is if that outcome can be measured, and we can agree that our vision can be measured in some way, and that shared outcome. When I was running animal control, I found that I was able to get a lot more support from the feral cat groups, the dog groups, the no-kill groups. I wasn't able to convince them of anything in my own right. But what I did find was that reducing euthanasia for healthy and adoptable animals was something that they all supported. And they were willing to give up, in the short term, some of their very, very strong beliefs about which strategy we should invest in because they believed in that shared outcome. Then I had to measure it, and I had to show that it was working. But in any case, unconventional partners will come together for a collective impact. They won't come together just because that you're charismatic. They won't come together because they like government. They won't even come together because they like each other. But unconventional partners will come together around a collective outcome that they agree to. So that's why I think data is really important to also balance out this process of going from visioning to planning. And then the other thing that I think has been really, really important, and this is something that's very, very important to Long Beach, given how dynamic and diverse our community is. But we really need to engage diverse and unorthodox skill sets. And that can be expressed. So when I'm talking about diversity, I'm talking about ethnic and racial and cultural and economic and otherwise. But I'm also talking about these different disciplines. And so when we think about a diversity of disciplines, I will say that some of the most difficult communication challenges are not between a Spanish speaker and an English speaker. It's between an engineer and an artist. Or it's between an academic and a bureaucrat. We have different roles, we have different goals, we have different training, and we've been enculturated by our education, by our successes. Our successes actually close our minds more than our failures. But we need to engage these unorthodox perspectives to solve unorthodox challenges. And this is where a process, and I'm going to kind of go back to this now, is that creating a process, creating an environment where we're focusing on the incubation of ideas. It does take a little bit of pressure off you because it means that you don't have to come up with all the great ideas. You don't have to come up with hair in a can. You don't have to come up with the hula chair. And you don't have to come up with new Coke. And in fact, by creating a process by which you get these competing and diverse perspectives, by creating the infrastructure and being open to being a facilitator, the champion of the system, that will allow for a lot of successes and a lot of failures at a smaller scale, and it will make sure that you don't end up being the guy or girl who comes up with hair in a can. Because the stakes are too high for us to embark on huge, huge failed projects. The homeless, the health issues, the children that we serve. We cannot fail big. We need to make sure that we build a process that allows for a lot of little failures all the time, which will open our eyes and also open our minds to engaging in a new way. History's filled with bad ideas, but bad ideas don't sink the majority. We all have, I have a bad idea at least once every morning before I leave the house, and it doesn't sink me. My wife just tells me it's a bad idea, and she's one of my unorthodox perspectives. But the idea is that by creating an environment, by creating a structure, and by taking a new look at your organization, looking at what it is that we're really trying to accomplish here, my recommendation is to build your incubator. And I don't mean that you have to set aside a lot of money. We're very lucky in the city of LA and the city of Long Beach that we were given $3 million by a very rich guy to try this. And the best way, in my opinion, to get to visioning and take visioning to planning and then to be able to operationalize that in a new and exciting way is as managers, as the captains of your ships, to really focus on building the infrastructure and the environment to incubate good ideas. And somebody told me something interesting once. He said, when the egg gets broken from the outside, life ends. Ideas die. Opportunities die. But when the egg is broken from the inside out, life begins. The other thing that happens when it gets broken from the inside out is that you get chicks. And chicks, not only are they cute, and they make everybody excited, they create energy, they create new vision and new opportunity, but you know what they also do? They grow up into chickens. And if you're truly incubating and taking care of your eggs and your chicks and your chickens, chickens lay eggs. And you get more innovation. So I'm going to end there. Build your incubators. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to come up with hair in a can. Really look at yourself as a farmer, as a cultivator, as an incubator of the future. And there is tremendous amount of potential within your organization, within this county. I think this county is going to lead the world over the next century. I really, truly believe that. Chris Rico believes that too. And really, thank you for having me today.
Thank you, John. Stay up for a minute, if you will. So, with all those metaphors, on behalf of Rabbi Farkas, I want to thank you for writing his sermon for this Sabbath. We really liked that chicken and egg thing. Right. Yeah, that was really good. That was really good. But seriously, you can see now why we were so excited to have John come to speak with you today. And we do have time for a couple of questions. Before we do that, I want to ask one question that's a little bit off topic. How many productivity managers do we have in the house this morning? Raise your hand. Productivity managers? Members of our Productivity Managers Network, I want to salute you and thank you for your service. We could not do what we do on the commission without you. And as I was telling John a little bit before the program started, these are our lead innovators and incubator people in the county because of the work that you all do. And I asked John and before he started, I said, so how do you go from being CFO of the police department to innovating for the whole city of Long Beach? And I suspect that's a question that many of you in individual departments in different roles may have. And so for the Productivity Managers Network, I want to ask that question for anyone who is interested in how to go from one department, from one division of one department, to thinking across a whole jurisdiction.
Well, I think if you ask different people, they'll give you different answers, including my boss. But I really think that, my career, every 2 to 3 years, they move me around to a different department because I'm willing to ask for help. And I think that what has happened over the last 10 or 11 years is the relationships that we develop in our careers are what not only us in times of need, they inspire us, but they also open us up to new opportunities that we don't see on the surface. And so I'll go back to when I was at Animal Care Services as an example, because that was a while ago. So I'm not going to ruin anybody's ruin anybody's career, but the ability to reach out and ask for help, the willingness to say, I don't know what's going on. I have this skill set. I have this knowledge, but I need your help. Throughout my career, I reached out to Marcia Maeda and the county. I reached out to Orange County. I reached out within the organization to the Parks and Rec Department to find ways that we could deliver service in new and different ways that reached the people who needed it most. I think the ability to ask for help and the ability to develop your skill set around the fundamentals of organizational management and administration are critical because that's how you pull it all together. You pull together the creative and weird stuff. You do it in small projects and pilots, and you prototype stuff. But building up that base of skills around budget and finance and administration, of course, procurement, drives everybody crazy everywhere in government. But developing that skill set and then coming to the table on these policy issues or these policy problems and letting people know that you don't know what you're doing, letting people know that you're really a facilitator of a solution and going to bringing together unorthodox partners. That, to me, has made my life really, really fun and exciting. And whenever I go anywhere in the city, I find there's friends there. There's people that I've worked with, and they're willing to support some new crazy idea that we might have. So those would be the two things. I think just the willingness to ask for help and constantly look for ways to help bring people closer to their vision and their dream. They'll keep you around.
So we have time for a couple of questions, and if you notice in your packets, you have little note cards where you can pre-write your question, and then I believe we have a couple of microphones. Mary and Laura have microphones on either side of the room. Do we have any questions for John? Is there? Yes. Okay, we'll start with Commissioner Waddell. Yeah.
How do you find the outlier? You spoke about the group at the top of the curve. How do you find this person is standing outside?
Yeah, that's a great question about finding that extreme case. In our case, I'll just give an example of what we did. We were looking at economic development, and particularly our research landed on what we feel is a real opportunity for the city of Long Beach, shifting its economic development philosophy based on macro changes away from just a property development focus and moving it more toward what we call an entrepreneurial ecosystem approach. And this was an approach. So we said, how do we find both the people who are doing it well and the people who are not doing it well, or the people in need, where those extreme cases. So for us, we actually used data to drive that. We looked at across the city, we said, where's unemployment and poverty its highest? Which corridors are actually losing ground with regard to sales tax production? We looked at the number of vacancies, vacant properties along these various corridors, and we said, this one's the worst. This one appears to be struggling the most. This one seems to have the most challenges. So our team, and this is where design thinking and user-centered design is expensive. And so I'll just put it that way. It's not something that you just are able to do unless you commit to some of it. We spent 30 hours on the ground along a corridor in our town that had the most challenges relative to those measures I mentioned. And they literally, in some cases, spent 2 to 3 hour shifts standing on a street corner and recording their observations. They also did a census, physical census, walking the streets and cataloging which buildings were vacant, which storefronts were occupied. We did the phone survey, and ultimately working through some opinion leaders and some community leaders who we call key informants. We did about 12 of those. They connected us with some of the people that were struggling and would be willing to talk to us. The challenge with finding the extreme case is that there's many barriers. There's a reason that those barriers exist. So it's not like you can walk in and the person who needs, I always said the kid in my classroom, I was taught middle school, who needs the most help is the kid who's going to kick you in the shins. They're not going to be the one that are easy to serve, and they're not going to be the one that is going to just open up to you and tell you how they feel about life. Well, they will, but it won't be constructive. So with the extreme case in our research, we really relied on those mixed methods And those are very common in sort of the anthropology world for observing human behavior. And our cultural anthropologist, Dr. Okonkwo, helped us to craft the questions and the strategies we'd use when we finally got to speak with some of, in our case, the entrepreneurs who were struggling. We had language barriers, so that wasn't huge. We had trust of government barriers, which was huge. And we also just had the barrier from the lack of knowledge about business administration. So when you ask somebody who has never had any sort of formal education about business administration, who's struggling to open their business or run or manage their business, they're not going to use the same sort of concepts to describe what they're doing. They're not going to identify their needs accurately. And so it is complicated work, and it involves multiple methods to get there. But I think that's where that's the true benefit of using some of these strategies, because City Hall is in many ways disconnected from the people who need us the most. Not intentionally, it happens over time, and we do the best we can to meet the most needs, sometimes not developing a really good methodology for reaching the people who need us most. So,
Thank you. I think there was a question over here. Yeah.
Hi, Mike Sylvester, DPSS. I spent half my career in the private sector, so all of what you're talking about is a lot of the things that we've been sort of ingrained. And working in a very risk adverse culture, what are the kind of things that you've done to get people to buy in to the, you can't, everybody knows we can't fail big. That's a given. But how do you fail small and not get the negative attention to where people don't buy in anymore and think that they have the freedom to do that?
No, that is a great question. So one of the things that you can do by creating an incubator and by creating what you call an innovation team, or however you want to describe it, I think like in Boston they call it the Mayor's Office of New Urban Mechanics. They have one in Philadelphia too. The idea is to transfer some risk. And if you can go to your leadership from the beginning and say, hey, look, we need to create a set of resources for research and development. Now, in the private sector, I'm sure that was actually a budget within an organization. And we look at some of our tech companies, some of our financial services and others, particularly in pharmaceuticals, huge research and development budgets. And that's just a given. Well, in government, what happens to research and development budgets? You cut them first. You hide them. You call them other things. You have a giant budget for Post-its, and you're really using it to pilot stuff. So it's not something that we're used to, this language. And so, but my recommendation is this. You need to communicate up front what this pool of resources is going to do. And in that way, I call it an insurance policy. You're shifting the risk of failure for the policymakers, because the policymakers also have to be good stewards of the public's resources. What an innovation team or an innovation fund can also do for you is you can then go out, if you set it up properly, you can do this through either a 501c3 or using, I know there's a Mayor's Innovation Fund. A lot of people in government are now setting up through foundations. If you have a community foundation, you can also have them administer it. That's the second thing, use private money. So that's what we're doing. And I will say, hey, for a guy for 10 years who all I did was cut budgets. From 2003 to 2016, we have been cutting budgets in the city of Long Beach. But what I was able to do at Animal Care was set up the Animal Care Trust. And people were willing to give to the trust even though they didn't want to give to the government. We used that to pilot innovation. Free spay, trying out low-cost vaccination, spay and neuter programs. And once we were able to buy new equipment, able to prove concept, we were then able to then go and ask for general fund budget. So the two things would be create a place to fail. Don't just go out and start failing today. Don't do it, all right? Don't go out and fail today. But what you should start doing, in my opinion, is start creating this expectation that we need a safe place to fail. And we also should structure it in a way that doesn't expose our policymakers to liability.
Thank you.
John, I appreciate your perspective on design thinking and how we bring that to our work. And clearly, you've done it and you've made it a principle for yourself, and you've talked about a few examples. But many of us lead large organizations, and the real trick is to get all of our folks and throughout our organizations to adopt design thinking and apply it to their projects and operations. So I wonder if you could share some ideas about how, as leaders, we can go make that happen in our organizations.
No, that is a very practical question, and it's something that I struggle with and have struggled with. I'm struggling with it in particularly now, not because the team that I'm leading doesn't buy in. Of course, they're rip-roaring ready to go. They're excited. What they're running into, because they all come from outside government, is smashing up and against the bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy, I'm an MPA guy, and I love a well-run bureaucracy. It allows us to do many things well, over and over again. As we see times change and staff turnover, we're still able to produce consistency, which is good for the market, the private market, just as well as it's good for the public that we serve. However, when it comes to adopting some of these principles within the bureaucracy is supposed to be consistent. The bureaucracy is supposed to deliver results that we can rely on, particularly in emergency services. And this was my problem in PD when I was there for a couple years. What I've found is the only way that it works is to engage somebody who's got a problem. So you don't engage them with design thinking. You engage them on something that they want to solve. And you backdoor them with design thinking. If I go out, I got totally destroyed in my first 2 weeks. I thought it was great. I put on I had gray suit, brown shoes, and I looked like an innovator, right? I walk into the department head meeting with all the chief executives from around the city, and no less than 5 minutes, I start getting the question. So what did you innovate today? How's that ideation going? And all these barbs that just came flying from all my colleagues. These are people I've worked with for years. And I realized right up front that I was not going to gain their support by teaching them about design thinking. I wasn't going to gain their support by convincing them about some of the stuff that I just showed you today. The way that we were going to gain support is helping them solve real problems. And some of the solutions that we've developed so far are extremely underwhelming process improvements. They're not innovative at all. But what do? Save 1,500 hours. Save 1,600 hours. Now you can reallocate those resources. And secretly now I have managers sending me forms and saying, hey, can you automate this for us? Can you do? And these are not innovative things, but these are process improvements that lead to better service, higher quality of life, and they create energy and momentum, and they open up ideas and minds. And so, again, going back to, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but going back to creating a place for this to happen allows for you to do some work in support of those operations and to build relationships. And by doing some work up front to make their lives better, to work on small operational improvements and to measure that improvement and free up resources, I believe that all good relationships take a long time to build, and you do it through smaller projects. You backdoor them with the design thinking, because that cultural change isn't going to happen for 36 months or 24 to 36 months. That's where I've seen it happen a lot in the organizations I've worked.
Well, this is wonderful food for thought, and I want to thank John for sharing his wisdom with us. We, as you all know, we are proud to have the nation's oldest and largest local government innovation fund here in Los Angeles County with our Productivity Investment Fund, which Supervisor Antonovich created back in the mid-1980s, I believe 1984. So since then, we have invested more than $70 million in loans and grants in precisely the kinds of projects that you're talking about. But as the PIB chair, I now have some ideas in the back of my head. I'm looking forward to a proposal from a department that is partnering with its foundation to do a little innovation. or from a department that wants to bring some design thinking into its work. That's exactly the kind of forward thinking that this commission and the Productivity Investment Board was set up to do. And so I am pretty confident that over the next months and years, we will see some echoes of this talk in the proposals that we get and in the submissions that end up a few years later in the Productivity and Quality Awards. I'm looking at Commissioner Gutierrez as I'm saying that, our chair of that committee. But thank you very much for your words and your leadership.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
So now we are going to move from vision to planning to collaboration for action. And I would like to invite up the members of our New Ideas panel to join us here on the stage. I'm going to introduce all 4 speakers, and the way we're going to go from here is they're each going to speak for a few minutes. I'm not going to interrupt the flow of that. And then we'll come back, I'll ask a question or two, and then we'll open up for discussion. But this is the moment where we are going to shift gears from big ideas and thinking to really actually getting into the nuts and bolts of how this works in the county. As a commissioner, I come really to appreciate the ways in which this county collaborates. Someone asked me, I was describing the conference the other day, and someone said, well, is collaboration really a problem in the county? And I said, you know what? We have seen some extraordinary collaborations. And if you look at our Productivity and Quality Awards, they are more often than not given to multiple departments working together. And what you're about to hear is an approach that 4 departments, among others, have taken to really thinking together about some very real issues. So I'm going to introduce all 4 of our speakers, turn it over to them, and then we'll come back for Q&A. And I'll invite them to come up here and speak as they speak. So in the event of a major county emergency or disaster, when the Emergency Operations Center is activated, the person in charge is, in fact, the county sheriff. The sheriff brings together the stakeholders and leads the rescue and recovery efforts. The first speaker on our panel is an executive team member and 41-year veteran of the Sheriff's Department. Richard Barrantes worked his way up through the ranks, taking on a variety of challenging assignments in custody, patrol, detective, and administration. Currently, he oversees court services, special operations, transit policing, detective, and the county-wide service divisions. We'll hear from him how the Sheriff's Department uses its connections to increase productivity. Following Richard Barrantes will be Cynthia Harding, who herself has more than 30 years of hands-on experience in the field of public health. She has managed and led programs in maternal, child, and adolescent health, tobacco control, and AIDS prevention. As the interim director of the Department of Health, Cindy oversees a budget that exceeds $900 million. And she has no problem connecting with the county's diverse population. She is fluent in Spanish and Portuguese and has taught in the National School of Public Health in Brazil. And in her spare time, many of you may know this, she is a practicing musician, playing a number of different instruments from Latin America. So I'm pretty sure she resonated with our invocation this morning as well. And our third speaker will be Marcia Maeda. She started her career long before earning a BA in animal science from Western Illinois University, and she has a graduate degree in nonprofit management from the University of San Francisco. In her community, she was known as the neighborhood pet sitter, caring for injured animals and rescuing baby birds. She worked for a local veterinarian while still in high school, and the experience solidified her desire to help animals in need. In 2001, she was appointed Director of Animal Care and Control, the largest government agency in the nation. She is a certified animal welfare administrator and lives with her husband, 4 rescued dogs, and a Shire draft horse. And it's evident that John Keisler wouldn't be where he is without your help. Finally, some individuals in the audience may not be aware of the important public safety role the agricultural commissioner has in county operations. but agriculture is one of the leading industries in the state of California and a major part of the county's economy. In fact, I believe that Los Angeles County is technically the largest agricultural county in the state. Used to be. Okay. Used to be. But there's still a lot of agriculture coming through our county. And Kurt Florin, who is Agriculture Commissioner and Director of Weights and Measures, is responsible for protecting that agriculture from invasive pests and disease. These predators enter Los Angeles through our county's seaports, airports, truck freight, and international travelers. Mr. Florin has extensive experience in exotic pest detection, packaged commodity inspection, and labeling enforcement. Kurt earned a degree in biology from Cal State University at Northridge and worked in the California Department of Food and Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So for now, I'll turn it over to Richard Barrantes and each speaker in order. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning. It's a pleasure being here representing the sheriff and all the men and women of the LA County Sheriff's Department. One of the goals I have this morning is to show how we collaborate and work in cooperation with all the county departments in handling major emergencies. One thing that should be noted that on a routine basis, we handle minor incidents. For example, if we have a mission regarding a dog fighting event, ourselves and the Department of Animal Control and us get together and develop a plan how we're going to address that particular problem, and we deal with that and actually resolve the problem and take care of that. If the courts, if a new law is passed and we have to change the current law and adapt with how do we handle the criminal justice system, we meet with the public defender, the alternate public defender, the district attorney, and the courts to figure out what we're going to do with the additional inmates coming into LA County, for example, and we do that on a daily basis. And we operate under a system called the Incident Command System, which basically we get together in the Operations Center. So the first thing I'm going to show you is our Emergency Operations Center, and basically this is where we get together with all the county departments and meet together and deal with solving problems, identify missions, identify the resources that we need to have to solve that particular problem. As stated previously, the sheriff is the person in charge of the problem. We're actually dealing with identifying the resources, identifying the missions from the operations center. When the operations center is not operating, we're getting ready for a major event such as an earthquake that we all should be prepared for. It's going to come soon, and we should have all our family and friends prepared on how to handle that. The operations center basically looks like this when it's not staffed. It's ready to go. There's a cubicle for every county department. It's ready to go when needed. Once the center is activated, every department is represented as the problems are identified. Various department members are involved in making the decision. As stated previously, it's a collaborated effort. No one makes the decision on themselves. Everyone provides input to assist in solving a particular problem. So all department members are involved, and eventually it's made, and then it's delegated to what we call a command post out in the field. So the EOC actually is developing the ideas, the missions, the resources, and then the mission goes out to a command post. For example, at a fire, we will have a command post in the city of Santa Clarita, for example, and they will get the mission from the EOC center to how to handle that particular fire with the fire department, animal control, public works, and so forth. Now that particular trailer has all the equipment, all the infrastructure is needed to run a problem from the field, very similar to the EOC, but smaller in nature. From the command post, we'll have an incident command post, which is now strategically a concept where now you have a squad of individuals, so it could be the fire department, the sheriff's department, animal control, actually dealing with a problem in a particular community. And that's operated from an incident command post. And that usually is operated by a commander and a staff of about 15 people. Now, mutual aid, when mutual aid is requested from the county, for example, Orange County would request resources from LA County. That comes to the EOC. The request comes in. We develop the appropriate planning, the funding for that particular mission, and then we identify the resources, and then the resources are sent to wherever the mutual aid is being requested. Orange County, we would send resources there. In LA County, we have a total of 88 cities that could request mutual aid. And that can be done within our own structure here in LA County. Once it gets to the level that LA County cannot handle that particular problem, then it goes up to the state level. Then the sheriff will request mutual aid from the state, and then we'll get resources from the state to help us resolve that particular problem. There's a difference between mutual aid and a pre-planned event. Mutual aid, it's an emergency. That means the event is occurring right now, we will respond. On a pre-planned event, the county will ask for funding for that particular request for resources. So if it's something that's being staged, like the Rose Parade, Rose Bowl, for example, it's a pre-planned event. The city of Pasadena will pay the county for all the resources that are needed to handle that particular event, which is different between the mutual aid request. In the end, it's important to recognize that under the emergency situations, the collaboration between all the county departments is very important. We have representatives there that not one department can make the decision. I think it's a collaborative effort, and the decisions in the end are the best ones that we can make together. That ends my presentation.
Good morning. Buenos dias, bon dia. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning and talk about some of the work that our Department of Public Health routinely does in collaboration with other county departments. I'm going to share a few highlights of that work and talk about some of our work in communities as well. So let's see if we can get the next slide up. Am I pointing in the wrong place? Okay, let's go back one. There we go. Okay. 2014, we all watched in Dallas as a case of Ebola that city was dealing with, and we watched in horror of some of the things that unfolded there in Dallas. And very quickly, in partnership with the Office of Emergency Management, Public Health pulled together, along with OEM, a task force in our county to prepare if we were to get a case of Ebola here, what we would do together to prepare for that. And this was one of those experiences where people willingly came to the table. I felt like I was throwing the party that everybody wanted to be at. In fact, department heads would come up to me and say, we weren't invited. And but I think that's really a testament to the dedication of our county department heads and our county staff to want to work together, to want to solve problems, to want to be part of the solution. So we worked together. We had weekly meetings. Each week we had to find a bigger space to meet in because there was so much interest in coming together to work on this issue. And we were working on how would we communicate about this? How would we work with hospitals? How would we transport a patient that had Ebola? How would we deal with a dead body? And we worked with all of these various departments. How would we house? How would we provide food? Where would we put up resources? And we worked together. We didn't ever have a confirmed case of Ebola in LA County. We monitored almost 250 travelers that had come here involving individuals that needed either home visiting evaluation or they'd come from countries that had been affected by Ebola. And we investigated 7 suspect cases. So we were right on it because we were able to come together, put together policies and procedures, and then exercise them together. Last fall, we worked together with all the county departments on an anthrax exercise, a simulated exercise. If we were to get anthrax release in LA County, how would we deal with that? And we worked together again with many different partners on if we needed to get out prophylactic medicine to people, how would we pull together the points of dispensing, which are called pods? How would we get the brought to LA County? How would we get it distributed out to the different pods? How would we make sure that people got that medicine? And we worked with a lot of non-traditional partners in this work, folks from Departments of Beaches and Harbors, Parks and Rec, Public Social Services, Treasurer Tax Collector. They wanted their staff to get exercised in how they would do this work, and so they came and participated in the exercise with us. And then many of the partners you see here on the podium on the stage with me, Sheriff, of course, helped us with the security of those pods, Fire Department with managing the operation of the logistics warehouse, Animal Care and Control, looking at the plans needed for mass animal casualties. So it was a great opportunity for us to exercise together. Particularly, how would we communicate to the public? How do we get messages out together? We need to speak in one voice in an emergency. And this gave us some great opportunities to practice together. We're currently involved in two mass interdepartmental events addressing ongoing issues. So we have two environmental contamination disasters, I would call them, in Los Angeles County. One in the southeast part of Los Angeles, surrounding the city of Vernon, a battery recycling plant that spewed arsenic and lead and other things into the air for a number of years. There's very high levels of soil contamination with lead in the communities of Maywood and Bell, Cudahy, East LA, parts of Boyle Heights, and other parts surrounding the battery recycling plant. And we've been working together, particularly with our sister departments in the health agency, on how we ensure the health, improve the health screening and getting people access to resources in those communities. But we've also been working with other partners, and simultaneously we've got in Aliso Canyon, I'm sure you've read about the gas leak, massive gas leak, and the impact on the residents that had to be relocated, or we're trying to work very actively to get them to be able to move back home and to make sure their homes are cleaned effectively so that they can move back and reduce their symptoms. And again, working with a number of different county partners in helping us with that. Our health agency folks, but Animal Care and Control was a huge partner because people's pets were having symptoms as well in that area, so helping us look at those issues. Department of Consumer and Business Affairs has been a key partner with this because, they're making sure that there were no reports of gouging from residents impacted by this, having to move out and hotels charging too much or other places that they were moving to, and then lots of complaints about people not getting their lodging paid for by the gas company. So we're working collaboratively with them, as well as when we were in, watching, trying to get this leak stopped, the fire department was a huge partner with us, and we all went into incident command, and for a month or so or more, we were up in the Aliso Canyon area working together daily. How were we going to communicate to the public about what was going on? County Council's been a huge partner with us in all of this because we're looking at where public health and legal issues intersect and how we can use the legal system to support the needs of residents in these communities. And the Assessor's Office and Tax Collector have been huge partners because there's impacts to people's homes and the values of their property, and they've been key partners in our work there. The Assistant Sheriff Barrantes spoke about mutual aid. We've been involved beyond the work that we do with our county partners in our county. We've also been working with other counties outside to recover from disasters through mutual aid. And the Calaveras County fire that was called the Butte Fire was considered one of the worst fires in the state's history due to the drought. We were able afterwards to send environmental health inspectors up to the Calaveras County to inspect water systems so that people could come home afterwards, because a lot of those families and homes up there were dependent on small water systems, and we had to test the water to make sure it was drinkable afterwards. And this fire overwhelmed the ability of their local environmental health department to do that work. So we were able to send teams up there to help with that. And more recently, because of the shooting in San Bernardino last December, which devastated the Environmental Health and Public Health Department of San Bernardino County, we have been sending teams of environmental health inspectors out to San Bernardino County to make sure that their businesses can keep going, that we can do the inspections that they've lost the staff to do while they work to rebuild their environmental health department. And recently, our CEO's Department of Communications did a nice video about our work there. I encourage you to take a look at that. Some of the lessons learned about this work in interdepartmental efforts to address emergencies, clearly it's a wide range of partners, and it's important for us to learn from each other in the departments what we do well, where we can lead on these efforts, and where we depend on another department to lead. I think several people today have talked about communication and how important communication is. This is really, really key in an emergency, but it's also really key in our preparedness efforts for us to learn how to communicate with each other, to make sure that we can speak the same language, that we understand what we're talking about, that we can create plans together about how to communicate, and that we speak in one voice when we go out to the community. Absolutely critical that we have one voice, that we craft that message together, that we get behind it, and then we work together to support the needs of our communities. And it's also important that we're not, that we're looking at the entire community, what we call whole community, including those access and functional needs populations, or AFN populations. It's absolutely critical. And through these exercises that we've done, through these the plans that we create, through the work that we do together, we're building trust among ourselves as well as with the community. We're building relationships. We're clarifying responsibilities. We're practicing together. We're building our own confidence and skills to be able to work together in an emergency to the betterment of our communities. And then just really quick, I want to talk a little bit about some work we've been doing with communities around disaster resiliency and disaster preparedness. And we did this in 16 communities because if you think about Katrina, and this is where this came out of, if you think about Katrina and the devastation that emergency caused in the city of New Orleans, we think about that hurricane, what it impacted. Many people were waiting for the government to come save them. And the government's infrastructure was overwhelmed by the size of that disaster. And so we've begun thinking about planning in new ways and how we can plan with communities to help build up resiliency in communities so that they're not only dependent on the government, but they've also got systems in place to help each other. So we launched 16 community pilots, 8 of them working on traditional emergency preparedness, have an emergency kit, have your plan, know what your emergency route is, all those sorts of things. And then community resilience, which is coming together and thinking about the entire community. Who are the most vulnerable in this community? How will we help them? What do we need to put in place to make sure that we take care of everybody in our community? What kind of training do we need? What kind of education do we need? And what more do we need to prepare networks in our communities? So we did this, as I said, in 16 communities. I'm going to move quickly because I'm running out of time. But we learned through this process of launching these projects, it was a 5-year project, we learned more about how to increase community outreach and engagement with our communities. We learned more about the kind of trainings that community needs, and we launched more than 100 trainings out in the communities. And then we increased the number of community partners, community agencies, faith-based organizations, others that were willing to come together and lead this work and work with our department in emergencies. I like this last slide. I know it's a little bit busy, but in the middle you see know your neighbors, plan together, be ready. That's our metaphor, not only with our work in communities, but with our county family. We got to know what each other does, know how to work in our lanes, but also know when to pass the baton to someone else who will take the lead in another area. We need to plan together, and we need to be ready in any kind of emergency that this county may face. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. And thank you for the Quality and Productivity Commission for inviting me to be on this panel. It's really exciting to be able to talk about some of the work that we're doing in the Department of Animal Care and Control. Let's see if I can get this going. There we go. You know, these are all pictures from Katrina. And I put that up there to really emphasize how important pets are to the people and what this means in a disaster. And these people absolutely refused to leave their homes, or if they were separated from their animals, they were so grateful when they were able to be reunited with them. You know, our pets are our family members. They're very, very important to everybody. And we see that every day. Just on a daily basis throughout the county, we partner with other departments like Children and Family Services and Community and Senior Services for our elder protection, where we see vulnerable children or adults or dependent adults or seniors being abused or neglected along with the animals. Our officers are mandated reporters of child abuse and elder abuse, adult abuse, and we partner with them when they're taking the children away, we're taking the animals away. And I'll tell you, in many cases, the parents are more worried about the animals that are getting taken away than their own children. I can't explain it. But they really are, and they will fight tooth and nail to get them back while they're facing really serious charges with the care of their own children. But that shows how important the pets are to people in the community and why it's important that we're available to help in these situations. And after Katrina, the federal government passed some legislation that required pets to be included in emergency planning for all local government. And that's what, although we've always worked very closely with sheriff and fire and many of the other agencies, this really solidified that, and we're really happy to be part of the overall county response to what we're doing. Of course, the first part is planning, and here's some photos of our officers and volunteers and the planning stages for this. And we go to the Emergency Operations Center frequently and cross-train in mock drills with all the other county departments there. And it's a great way where we establish our relationships and get experience in how we respond to certain things. We also have these volunteers, these equine volunteers, and we've set up a special group of folks who are mostly horse owners, very experienced horse handlers, some equine veterinarians, and they work with us when we have to pull large numbers of horses out of fire danger. We can pull 100 horses in a day, and although we have horse trailers and so forth, that's a lot of animals to move, especially if we have to get them out of the fire zone and set up a temporary sheltering site for 100 horses and care for and feed those animals as well for a number of days until they can be returned back. So we're grateful for our volunteers, and we train with them regularly as well as part of the planning process. We have mutual assistance agreements with animal care and control agencies around Southern California and some national ones too. The ASPCA, for example, would bring in resources if there was a national scale disaster like Katrina, where we're caring for animals from, I mean, Katrina was months on end until they could reunite pets with their owners. And this comes into handy every day that we're working in one way or another. Here's some pictures, some of the action. This was, I believe, the station fire, where you can see how close the flames get. They move very quickly. The wind changes. We have to redeploy, and we've had to move sheltering sites a few times when the fire got so close or change directions. So it's really an extensive effort in cooperation with sheriff, with fire, you know, the CEO's office, public information, and so forth. I wanted to show you some of our small animal sheltering trailers. We got these after the La Cañada mudslides, and people were being evacuated, and they didn't have a place to take their dogs and cats, and we didn't have anything for them. And except animal control trucks, which is what we brought. But of course, that's not suitable for really a long time sheltering. Our supporting foundation that raises money for us, the nonprofit Los Angeles County Animal Care Foundation, had received a very generous bequest, and they purchased 4 trailers like this for us. And since then, through a Homeland Security grant, we've been able to add another 2. And as you can see, these are set up for caring for small animals for a long period of time. They're heated, they're air conditioned, they have their own power, their own communications, they have generators. We can do physical exams of the animals in the vehicles, and of course we can move them. Each one can hold between 30 and 50 animals. And when there's not an emergency, we use these for off-site adoption events, low-cost spay-neuter programs, transporting animals from one shelter to another if we're overpopulated at one shelter. So we put these to regular use. And then later on, when we had the mudslides around San Gabriel's area, which really isn't even our service area, but we assisted the Inland Valley Humane Society and brought our trailers out to help them. And that's the picture in the rain there that you see there. The next slide I'm going to talk about is our cobra case, and you guys might remember this from about 2 years ago. There was a white cobra that was found in Thousand Oaks loose. It's a monocled cobra, extremely venomous. If a person is bitten, they'll be dead in an hour, unless they get an immediate dose of anti-venom. The only anti-venom was available in Denver and San Diego, because the only place, anti-venom is very expensive to produce and keep, and the only places that keep it are zoos that actually have a particular species of snake. Otherwise, it's not worth their time to have it. So we got the call from a concerned citizen, and fortunately, he took a photograph of it in his backyard, because we wouldn't have believed there's a white cobra in your backyard. Yeah, but it really was. And we got out there right away, and of course, you know, finding snakes is difficult. We're very lucky that it's white. If it was a natural color, it would have blended in with natural surroundings. But this was a true emergency, and when we found out we got the picture. We're not snake experts, but we knew a snake expert at Riverside County Animal Services. We sent her the photo for a positive identification. We learned what it was. We contacted the zoo. They said, we don't keep those here, so we don't have any anti-venom. They have a national database of anti-venom for all the species of snakes. So they went into the database. They found it in Denver and San Diego for us. I called San Diego. Yep, we have it. We can give it to you. Then I called public health, because if somebody came in with a snake bite to the local hospital, they're going to think it's a rattlesnake, and they're going to give it the person the wrong treatment, and they'll die. And through our collaborations with public health and veterinary public health services that we work with very regularly, I called Dr. Karen Einert there and said, Karen, here's the situation. It's Thousand Oaks. It's not even LA County, and it's the hospital. Can you help us reach out to the people there and put them on alert? This snake was about 2 blocks from a local grammar school, and it was in a neighborhood. And she got immediately on the phone with their counterparts there, got them on board. We were able to talk to them. This hit the media like you wouldn't believe. It totally overwhelmed us. We sent a full contingent, probably about 15 officers out there, and I said, you guys go out there and you go door to door. You put signs everywhere. I don't want anybody touching a white snake. And talk to people. You know, somebody's going to see it, be out there, be ready to get it. And this went on for about 2 days, but the media was everywhere, and we weren't prepared to handle that. And the CEO's office sent 2 communications officers for 2 full days to be there for us, and they fielded over 500 media inquiries and hits, and it was going viral, and it was on Twitter. And when we talk about innovation and new things that happen, that's how we found the snake. Fortunately, on the second day, there was a woman driving to pick up her child from school, and the snake went in front of the road in front of her, and she saw it. There happened to be one of the dozens of news crews there, and she said, hey, I just saw the snake. He tweeted it the CEO PIO staffer there saw that, and he said, guys, it's at this address. Sent all the officers over there, and we got it. And I couldn't believe it. But, I'll tell you, it was really, really scary because this is a kind of snake. I mean, it could live in Southern California for a long time, highly venomous. If you don't have the anti-venom immediately, you have to go on a respirator, and, it would kill anybody a bit. And it had a full venom pouch. So I just have to say I'm tremendously proud of my staff that did this. We get amazing calls that nobody would ever believe, and I could tell stories about that forever, and they always come through and get the job done. And one of the reasons we were successful in this was all the help from all of our partners and liaisons that we had. I just wanted to mention a little bit about emergency communications. Of course, that's an important thing, and as we learned from the Twitter and how that can help, but we have also upgraded all of our radios and satellite communications, so we're able to communicate much better now with all the other agencies that we partner with, and we're really moving forward in that area as well. So, and as part of strategic planning, this is my strategic planning crew. They come to work with me, and if you ever stop by my office, you'll get to meet them, and they help us solve all the problems for animal care and control. Thank you.
Good morning. Pleasure for me to be here. I'm technologically challenged. Oh, there it is. So the Department of Agricultural Commissioner Weights and Measures, you will see up there on the screen, we call it the biggest little department in the county. I will admit to you that that is self-proclaimed, self-dubbed. But hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a little bit of an idea why they use that phrase. So I'm taking a different approach here, and I thought maybe the first thing to set the stage was just with a show of hands, honest answers. Who has absolutely no clue what we do? That's what I thought. So I'm hoping to give a little bit of an education about some of the programs. Can't possibly go through all 30 of them. That's what we have. But to let you know, when it comes to disaster preparedness and response, kind of focused on the potential that our department holds, perhaps more than a clearly defined plan. Hey, it worked. So under the county's emergency response plan, ACWM is actually a secondary responder. It's if you go through that entire document, there's a single line in there that says ACWM will assist Department of Public Health, period. That's all it says. So what that really means, whatever Cynthia needs, we're going to be there to step up and do. But I can't stand here and explain to you exactly what that's going to be because that's all it says. And when it comes to the state, we're a little bit unusual in that we've got the State Department of Food and Agriculture, the State Department of Pesticide Regulation, and for that matter, State Division of Measurement Standards, and I and my staff in some ways report to them as well as we report to the board. But in very simple terms, under the state emergency program, those state departments report to State Office of Emergency Services. State OES coordinates with county OEM. I know there's a misprint in there. And simply put, our job is to assist those state partners wherever they're needed, CDFA or DPR, pesticide regulation. And that's about it. There really isn't a formal plan that we have. But today, again, I want to give you a quick idea, and I'm hoping quick because I have way too many slides, of what we do, but perhaps more what we can do and where we can be a resource. And we, I think, are a very valuable potential resource in terms of information and aid that could be provided in response. Our environmental Protection Bureau, some of the roles that I'm going to discuss real quickly here. We compile ag production stats. That's kind of a boring thing. We mandated by law to report that every year. But we also go out in the event of disasters and gather loss statistics from agriculture. And that goes towards declarations of emergencies, which I'll get into more. But that becomes very, very important to the growers in the county so that they can survive. They can come back after they're impacted by disasters. We do hazardous material inventory on the ag side. Fire typically handles that, but the ag industry really wanted the ag commissioner being kind of a one-stop shop and know who they're dealing with. And so we do all the hazmat inventory there. That's pesticides, fuels, fertilizers, and other hazardous material. GIS mapping, we GIS map all of those storage sites now on the agricultural side. We do all of the pesticide use enforcement and regulation in the county and team with those throughout the state in doing that. And then we perform all pesticide illness investigations. So when we get to the GIS mapping, over the last few years, my department has really embraced that technology, and we've been doing a lot of work in doing a lot of GIS mapping throughout our programs, really aiding us in preparedness for potential disasters and emergencies. Agricultural hazmat storage, again, discussed that. Nurseries, you wouldn't think nursery is agriculture, but that's actually now, today, it was mentioned before, there was a time, LA County, actually up until 1950, was the largest agricultural production county in the entire United States. Now it's all paved over, Hollywood took off, aerospace. But we still have an ag community, but our biggest industry is the nursery industry. And those maps become very critical because nursery stock moves all through the state for landscaping and what have you, and it carries pests and diseases that other counties and frankly other states don't want. So knowing exactly where they are when those things emerge becomes very critical. Apiary, beekeeping, we're responsible for that. Why? Bees really are key pollinators, of course, and there's an awful lot of ag commodities that are 100% reliant on bee pollination. So we need to know where they are when there are disease outbreaks that can impact bees. But on top of that, Africanized honeybees, the big killer bees you remember in the 90s that were coming and we weren't all going to be here. We're still here, isn't quite as bad as it was expected, but when they do come, because they're out there, we've got responsibility for that. I bet you didn't know it. But all of this GIS mapping that we have done and continue to do is really critical for the quick identification of high-risk sites throughout the county, depending on what that might be. Earthquakes, wildfires, pesticide accidents, floods, and these other calamities that can cause pesticide accidents. Obviously, pests and disease outbreaks, what you hear about with us with all these fruit flies and invasive pests and things, instantly knowing where those crops are at any time so we can respond to that. But also terrorist threats. An awful lot of, you wouldn't think that agriculture and certainly weights and measures would have anything to do with terrorism. But if you remember back to the Oklahoma City bombing, that was all a pesticide-based bomb, ammonium nitrate, you'll recall. We know where all that is at any given time, how much of it, and we actually have opportunity to coordinate with Homeland Security when there are threats that come out to that. But I can tell you, you know, we've had the planes into buildings, we've had the bombs, the suicide bombs, and what's really talked about an awful lot in Homeland Security and other threats are attacks to the food supply and the water supply. And that can be done with all kinds of chemicals, with pesticides, dropping biological agents, E. coli or what have you, over lettuce fields. It's a major, major concern. And just as a note, just last week I was meeting with the executive director of Custom Border Protection, the Ag Inspection Program, who assured me they have thwarted any number of potential threats, but he actually said to me, I could tell you about it, but then I would have to kill you. And when you hear that from a Fed, you take it seriously. So this slide, pass over that real quickly, but that's just an example. Within a nursery, that outlined area is the entire nursery. These are under power lines, so they get very stretched out. But if you can make out a little blue dot there, that's the kind of precise information we have about the specific pesticide storage that's right within that overall property. And the reason that that's so critical is, of course, if we could pull out and spend the time with it, you can pick out schools, hospitals, nearby parks, see all the sensitive sites, and then bring in other layers from the assessor's office and what have you to identify all kinds of potential drift and impact should there be a spill in this example, and coordinate the best response plan to that type of thing. Pesticide use, as I say, we're responsible for all of that enforcement here. I won't dwell on this, but all that day-to-day work does protect the public, pesticide applicators, workers, non-target crops when they have accidents and spray consumables that aren't supposed to have that particular chemical. It's a major thing. Our biggest job, quite frankly, is protecting these workers from themselves. You cannot imagine what we see every day. I'm talking the termite fumigation people, agricultural people, who they're supposed to have goggles, gloves, long sleeves, and they're out there spraying it, practically bathing in this. It would just amaze you. But pesticide accidents like that are themselves disasters, and an awful lot of the work that we do is to prevent that from happening in the first place. Pesticide accidents, again, you already understand we do the investigation of those, or in doing so, we try to find what was the cause, who's responsible, did they violate any laws, and ultimately we do go after them and prosecute them for that. But we do an awful lot of routine education of pest control operators, the agricultural industry, to try to encourage them, if not force them, to use things safely. And obviously identify where we have to do increased enforcement and aid in developing new or heightened, strengthened laws and regulations, again, all for the prevention of disasters in the first place. Pesticide illness investigation. Whoops, what did I do here? Here we go. Just, again, to give you an idea of the kinds of things that we do, we're responsible for investigating all reported illnesses that are pesticide related. In the last year and a half or so, we've done over 500 of those. It may surprise you to know about half of those are sanitizers, antimicrobials. You wouldn't think of that, agriculture pesticides. You're thinking of them spraying out in the fields. But all these sanitizers that are used in hospitals, hotels, schools, even in restaurants, because there's sanitizers in the dishwashing liquid. They splash it in their eyes, they're not wearing gloves. Those are pesticides in our world. The rest of it is all conventional pesticides, as I discussed, in both agriculture and structural, your Orkin and Terminix people and such. We lead all those, and again, under these potential terrorist threats, we would be the ones who are called in to team with State Department of Pesticide Regulation and US EPA in investigating those. Agricultural statistics, annual crop report, that's that boring thing I told you about. But we compile these statistics for crop damage. That can be from wind, flood, fire, freeze, any number of causes. And what we do with those numbers is that can result in a declaration of emergency from either the governor or from the president. In simple terms, the line to meet is a 30% loss in either overall ag production or even of a single grower. And what that then does with the declaration is opens up low interest loans that are available from USDA, Farm Service Agency, to get those growers back on their feet. But when you think about agriculture, it gets lost sometimes. this is in our world, these are our disasters when these things come through. It's not earthquakes, it's not fires so much, but California feeds the nation in a very big way and feeds an awful lot of the world. The largest ag production state in the entire U.S. clearly. If you take numbers 2, 3, and 4, add them together, we still outproduce all those other states. The middle of the country is the breadbasket, kind of refer to us as the fruit basket. All those great things that make life worth living, this is the place that they grow. So, over 70% of the fresh citrus, nearly 100% of pistachios, a huge amount of the leafy greens, because we all love salads, of course. That's all California production. Where are we here? So our weed program, I don't know if you're getting surprised yet at how many different things we do, but Weed Hazard Pest Management Bureau, very quickly, weed and brush removal, we do that for fire risk suppression, fire break maintenance, that aids the fire department. Flood channel maintenance, you'll hear we do an awful lot of work for DPW flood maintenance to keep because we do vegetation removal, a lot of work with vertebrate pests to keep those flowing. Same thing with debris basin maintenance and plague suppression. Touch on that in a minute, but dealing with fleas on ground squirrels to knock them down because they carry bubonic plague. You might not think we get involved in that, but we do. Weed hazard there, obviously that work is done to reduce fire hazards. We do the work on unimproved properties. Fire has a department for improved, meaning having structures. And yet we, in the end, when they're not successful in getting those homeowners to actually clear, we end up coming in and doing a lot of that work for them. But this is all about maintaining defensible space. We know over the years we've saved thousands and thousands of homes by enforcing on this clearance. And because of that work, we've got tractors, chainsaws, packers, all these things that for all kinds of disasters that could occur, we could be on the ready to come in and use those alternatively. Again, on weed abatement, in simple terms, property owners have to maintain certain levels of weed and brush clearance. It's a very involved process we go through with notices and warnings and such, but in the end, if they don't clear their property, we and our crews go in and actually do it for them. Charge them for it, but we do it for them. But we monitor over about 30,000 properties in high fire hazard areas every year, and typically each year in the end we end up physically clearing about 4,000 of them. So again, this is a lot of the work that we do is about disaster prevention. And illegal dumping. That's one thing that we're doing more and more about. Remember, agriculture weights and measures, you wouldn't think it. But all this illegal dumping, much of that up in the Antelope Valley, it's getting to be a real problem, creates a health risk, adds to the fire risks. We're doing more and more on clearing those. Vector control, and as I mentioned with flood maintenance, we do an awful lot of work for other county departments, but also for cities, Caltrans, forestry, others. These little boogers that do a lot of burrowing, the burrowing rodents, they end up damaging levee walls, flood channels, weakening bridges, and we actually handle a lot of that routine work so that we can make sure that we don't suffer negative impacts of major floods. Some of what we've done in past emergencies, real quickly there, we've been out with our crews working with the fire department, clearing to create fire breaks and defensible space. We responded with a number of departments for tree and limb removal because we have the equipment to do it. Same thing with wind damage, the Arboretum. County Park suffered an awful lot of damage several years ago, and there's one picture there that we're not totally immune. I think that was the Sayre fire that swept through all of View. We lost, we had about 14 vehicles melt to the ground, lost 3 trailers, and on and on and on. So I know I'm running very short here. You have the handouts, but I was going to run through these various programs in our agricultural side. We do an awful lot of work verifying quality of produce and such. We do package inspection of every commodity imaginable, not just foods, but all your building supplies, chemicals, polyethylene products, you name it. Petroleum enforcement, both quality and accuracy. That we're a tremendous resource to a lot of folks that if you need emergency supplies, we know who they are, where they are. One very quick story on price verification. We do the scanner enforcement, making sure you're not overcharged at retail stores. What on earth would that have to do with disasters? Back in the '94 Northridge quake, city attorney was seeing an awful lot of price gouging out there. All of a sudden overnight charging $5 for a battery, $10 for a jug of water, taking advantage of people. They wanted to crack down on it, but they suddenly realized we don't have any experience going out there shopping and identifying this. Who on earth do you call? They called Weights and Measures because we do that work. And I'm proud to say that nearly all of the convictions that occurred on that, we did those investigations. So it goes on and on. You'll see in the rest of the handout, we have a lot of vehicles, 110 CWERS radios, an awful lot of resources, and I appreciate you giving me the time to point that out, because when we get to working together, teaming, connectivity, and coming up with new ideas, hopefully that explanation gives you some thoughts, and we're here to help, so let me know. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna hand this mic over, and I'm gonna pose one question, and then we'll see if we have for audience questions. But it is the question that we had thought back in November when we started talking about this panel that was going to be the question, right? Because El Nino was coming. El Nino, right? Like, what was that? That was January, and then it was over. And now the State Water Board has lifted all these restrictions. Here's the question for the panel, and if you can answer it briefly so we have a little bit of time for audience questions. It represents a moment where you planned ahead for something that we all were expecting but hasn't materialized. And yet, I'm sure that process of planning and collaborating was valuable for each of your departments. Can you say in a word what was the value of looking ahead at El Nino and what we'll do differently now, even though El Nino didn't really happen, except for a little bit in January?
Thank you for that question. I'll start, and then I'll pass it down to my colleagues. So I think, first of all, thank God we didn't get El Nino. I mean, that's actually good news. But I think we did a lot of work preparing for it, and I think what was really exceptional was the work we did working together on communication. Again, one voice, how we're going to communicate to the public together, how are we going to communicate with each other, what are those plans in place, what are going to be the points that trigger us launching our plans. So we talked that through, and we had that all in place. One of the things in particular for our department, which I think was key, is learning to be flexible and thinking about how we're going to be flexible in a disaster when it requires it. So while we have the best plans, part of our department does a lot of sort of regulatory activities. And so they go in, for example, one of our roles in El Nino in a disaster is making sure that the shelters are habitable. And so we go in, we have a checklist, and we go through each thing and make sure. We realized that if we had to open up a whole bunch of shelters really quickly, our traditional method of doing that kind of checklist regulatory activity was not going to help people because we weren't going to be able to open enough shelters quickly. So we developed a much more streamlined process to be able to do that, which would allow us to help people open those shelters much more quickly and still make sure we were protecting public health.
I agree with what Cynthia said about the communications and getting our message together and consolidated. We also did an extensive review of our shelters and our equipment and our deployment plans for staff for emergencies, and we found a number of areas where we could refine and get efficiencies in place. So we'll be able to use those going forward as well.
In terms of agriculture, we found ourselves in a strange place because we spent years trying to figure out how to support growers dealing with the drought. There was no water. And then seeing the risk of floodwaters coming all of a sudden. So really we had to be prepared both ways, but we opened up more communication with our partners, that being the LA County Farm Bureau, the growers themselves, certainly our state partners. So we had plans on how to assess and evaluate any damage out there. We did do a preliminary planning and arrangements. Some of the work we do for brush clearance and such, which again is for flood channel maintenance. We increased our contracts with outside vendors that we use, so we were ready to respond to that. We did purchase extra chippers, which would help in doing away with fallen limbs and such. So there was a lot of planning involved, but we're very happy that it didn't come to fruition.
Likewise, we collaborated with a lot of the county departments in dealing with the homeless and the riverbeds, for example. We had a lot of planning. We did brought a lot of services, took care of a lot of the problems right there. We also worked with the communities that had mudslides in the past, get them ready, Department of Public Works and shelters if needed. So the planning effort was significant, and we're all happy there was no major problems.
Indeed we are. I just missed the water. But anyway, I want to thank our panelists. Please join me in giving them a round of applause. We have time for one or two questions if there's a burning question. Commissioner Gutierrez.
I have a burning question. Does the LA Zoo now have a white snake called Blanca? What happened to our snake?
The LA Zoo was very helpful. They didn't want the snake for permanent because it's a big risk to have an animal like that if you don't have the proper precautions around. But they graciously took the snake after we captured it because, we weren't going to keep it at the animal shelter. And they kept it in quarantine. And then when it was ready, it was transported to the San Diego Zoo. So she lives there now. They had a whole naming contest among their donors and the public. I can't remember the name they picked out for her. But if you go to the San Diego Zoo and see the white monocled cobra, it's our cobra.
Fantastic. Yes, one last question. Okay. Thank you for mentioning that. And I did experience the destruction of part of the bike path in Playa, and that required substantial work on your office's part to get that, and Public Works to get that back up and running. So yes, as a Santa Monica resident, I should have acknowledged that. So yes, you're absolutely right, and that's part of the message. I don't know if people on the other side of the room heard, but this is actually a very important point. From the perspective that we raised just among of us, we were talking about El Nino as something that largely hadn't happened. And what we heard from the Department of Beaches and Harbors is that in fact it did, because it happened on the beach and it required response from Beaches and Harbors, from Public Works, from the fire department to be able to address the serious erosion that had occurred. And that is why connectivity is important. I take the point and I take the correction. The fact that we are in the room together this morning enables us to get that knowledge across to and from one another. And It's meetings like these and interdepartmental conversations that allow us to remain as knowledgeable as possible. So I'm glad you made that point, because we do have to listen to one another and make a difference. So, and thank you again. So again, thanks to our panel. We will. I now want to turn to a couple of housekeeping chores, but again, a round of applause for the work that they've done. We are heading into the home stretch. We could say that the runway is in sight, but we need to take flight before then. Before I introduce our next speaker, I want to do three things. Number one, I want to let you know that you have an evaluation sheet in your packets, and we hope that you will fill it out. As many of you know, we take your comments very, very seriously and work hard to refine the work that we do in bringing you the conference every year. The second thing that I want to do is let you know that particularly after our next speaker, there is a gift bottle waiting for you at the registration desk on the ground floor on your way out, which we hope you will take a water bottle for everyone. And finally, I think Emily is still here. Where's Emily? There she is. Okay, we were talking about San Diego County taking the monocle Cobra. We have a guest from Alameda County who has come back to our leadership conference, Emily Sadig. And if you are following QPCLC 2016 hashtag on Twitter, she is winning it. So a little NorCal SoCal competition. Please like and retweet Emily's posts, and let's try to catch up with our colleague from the East Bay. But it's now my great pleasure to introduce Norma Clayton. She is the Vice President of Learning, Training, and Development for the Boeing Company. And in that role, she leads the design and implementation of training and development programs for Boeing's 160,000 employees across the globe. Actually, only just a little bit bigger than the county. Norma has 30 years of leadership experience in an impressively wide range of domains, from manufacturing and fabrication to supplier management and procurement to maintenance and modification centers. And I'm just going to introduce another editorial comment here, which is that most of our speakers and John Keisler have described working cross-functionally in their prior work. And we see this in government, we see this in corporate. And so thinking about how we get these broad visions toward innovation and visions toward planning and outcomes, it helps to have this cross-functional experience. Before joining McDonnell Douglas in 1995, Norma held leadership roles in manufacturing, supply chain, and program management, and plant operations at Lockheed Martin, General Electric, RCA, and General Motors. She first began her career as an engineer. As Norma has said, that experience working as an engineer gives me an important perspective because I've lived through long product cycles, I understand obsolescence and innovation, and I absolutely believe in the idea, the necessity of lifelong learning. She is a lifelong learner herself. She is pursuing a doctorate in operations research at Webster University, where she also earned 2 master's degrees in business management and human resource development. She believes strongly in the need to build strong communities of learning, and she has made it her mission to keep Boeing's employees engaged in learning so they have the skills and tools to solve the challenges we face today and the capabilities we need to dream, design, and build the next generation of aerospace products and services. We're grateful that Norma has made the time in her busy schedule out to Los Angeles from Missouri, especially because Boeing is celebrating a very important birthday this year, its centennial. So with that, I welcome Norma Clayton. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sean, and good morning, everyone. How are you? Okay, so we're on the runway, and we're going to take flight here in just a few minutes. But one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to just take a moment and thank all of our veterans who are across the web or here in the room. It is a privilege and a pleasure for me to serve you every day in the work that I do at Boeing, both in theater and also around the world in our respective plants and in our offices. So on behalf of the 160,000 employees across the company, I just want to say thank you for your service, and just know that we are continuing to be on the battlefield with you. Now, I was very intrigued by John's presentation earlier, John Keisler. And John, I just want to thank you for that briefing and all the metaphors that you use, because that's what keeps us innovating inside Boeing. So you gave us some new fodder to work with, because we are a technical company. We're made up predominantly of engineers, and we're adding a lot of artists to the work that we do. And it's hard for us, as Commissioner Gibson will tell you, us left-brained people are now learning to think from right to left. And it is quite challenging as you think about innovation and preserving products from obsolescence. So thank you for that. And also, I now know that I'm part of the breadbasket state. I live in the Midwest in St. Louis, Missouri, and we are also a very heavy agriculture state as well. So I was intrigued by the discussion that we just had with our panelists. So thank you very much for enlightening me and those in the room. So I'm delighted to be here with you today, and it's so appropriate that you include Boeing in the Leadership Conference this year. And the reason for that is because Boeing, the state of California, and the county of Los Angeles have a very long, proud, and productive history together. And so I want to begin with one of those remarkable connections that we have between us, and I look at it as a historic first. So today, many of you may not know, but today is the birthday of a true leader and pioneer, a physicist and an astronaut, someone that I wanted to be one day, but unfortunately I didn't have the eyesight. And that's Sally Ride. So Sally Ride was born here in Los Angeles, May 26, 1951, and 32 years ago, on June 18th, 1983, she became the first woman ever to fly in space. Now, many of us were around back then, but there's probably some who weren't. And one of the things that I remember was just how exciting that flight was. I was a young, budding engineer, really excited to see this first woman take flight. But what was more striking to me was the lyric that went with it. Ride, Sally, ride. Right? You all remember that? We heard that a lot back then. And it's still very, very popular today. The space shuttle that carried Ride for that historic journey, believe it or not, was built right here in Downey, California, 13 miles southeast of here by Rockwell International's Space Transportation Systems Division, which is now part of the Boeing Company. So that's just one link that we have between us in a long list of connections, which fits nicely with today's theme for this conference, connectivity to productivity. The connection between Boeing and LA County over the decade has been strong, enduring, and productive. As you may be aware, and Sean just reiterated, Boeing is celebrating its centennial this year. It's on July 15th, 2016, which is when we were founded. But what you may not know is that Boeing's connection to Los Angeles goes back even further than 100 years, when our founder first discovered his passion for aviation. The Los Angeles International Air Meet was held at Dominguez Field near present-day Compton. This was in 1910, when biplanes were cutting-edge technological advancements. The 11-day event was the first of its kind in the United States and attracted nearly 25,000 spectators a day, including a 29-year-old lumberman and shipbuilder from Seattle, Bill Boeing. And Boeing tried to catch a ride with one of those pioneering aviators at the meet, but he left disappointed. But this is the place that triggered his passion. It took 5 long years before his first airplane ride, when he sat next to a pilot on the front edge of the lower muslin-covered wing. Afterwards, he told his business partner, "There isn't much to that machine. I think we could build something better." That moment of inspiration in LA and the abiding determination to build something better has led to advances in aviation and continual breakthroughs in technological advances that have changed the world. Allow me to share with you a very, very brief video that highlights some of the breakthroughs.
We were born 100 years ago into a new American century, born with a hunger to fly and a passion to build something better. And what an amazing time it's been. Decade after decade of innovation, inspiration, and wonder. So we say thank you, America, for a century of trust, for the privilege of flying higher and higher together.
Attributable to California. Besides Bill Boeing himself, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about two other towering figures in Boeing's history that have remarkable connections to Los Angeles: Howard Hughes and Donald Douglas. Donald Douglas earned a mechanical engineering degree from MIT in just 2 years. 2 years. He came west and he founded his airplane company in Santa Monica in 1921. 3 years later, 4 Douglas World Cruisers completed a daring round-the-world flight and established his company's reputation in a single stroke. During World War II, though, to keep up with the need for military transports, he built plants in Long Beach and El Segundo. More than 4,000 planes flew out of these plants, including the C-47 Skytrain, the military version of the legacy DC-3. Over the decades, Douglas and Boeing spurred each other to new levels of innovation and supplied the world with aircraft that have made commercial air travel an everyday global reality. In 1967, Douglas merged with McDonnell Douglas, and in 1997, the combined firm merged with Boeing. So, as a new company, Boeing used that Long Beach site to produce one of the most sophisticated cargo planes in the world, the C-17 Globemaster. And Long Beach employees continue to provide support, maintenance, modifications, and upgrades to more than 279 aircraft in that fleet, which has racked up more than 3 million flight hours and delivered humanitarian aid during every major national disaster on the planet since the C-17 took off in 1991. And let's not forget Howard Hughes. Science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke originated the concept of satellites operating in a stationary orbit above Earth. Howard Hughes, though, made it a reality. The breakthrough innovation, the miniature circuit chips, made it feasible to launch and place communication satellites in geosynchronous orbit. And in 1963, Hughes Space and Communication built the world's first such satellite, which was termed SYNCOM, which means synchronous communication, right here in Culver City. Amazing. 2010, Hughes becomes part of Boeing's portfolio of products, but a very important part. The largest satellite production plant in the world today is right here in El Segundo. It's our Boeing El Segundo facility, which is about 13 miles southwest of here, or in LA traffic, about 3 hours. Right. Since 1963, though, Boeing has delivered satellites to more than 50 customers in 20 countries. So unlike most of our competitors, we have the ability to operate in both the commercial and defense markets, which is a huge advantage. 1/4 of the commercial satellites in orbit at this very moment were all built in El Segundo. Today, Boeing is a company with a history like no other, one whose products and services are positively impacting millions of people around the globe every day. Today, our revenue stands at $96 billion. So you can see sometimes mergers and acquisitions can really spark new ways of thinking. They can bring new innovation because as you do them, you acquire a lot of intellectual knowledge. And we have been able to capitalize on that knowledge over the years that will take us into and beyond the second century. And our company today has significant potential for growth. We are also the world's largest aerospace company, a leading manufacturer of commercial jetliners and defense space and security systems. Now, I will admit, many of you fly on Boeing airplanes, correct? We are not responsible for your legroom, okay? We give guidance, but your airline owners are responsible for your legroom. So I had to put in that shameless disclaimer for us. We know you want more legroom. You have to talk to the airlines for that. We are a top U.S. exporter that supports airlines and government customers in 150 countries. Our products and tailored services include commercial and military aircraft, satellites, electronic and defense systems, performance-based logistics for the military, training systems, launch systems, and advanced information and communication systems. So in short, we've come a long way since Bill Boeing's fateful visit to LA in 1910. And the reason why we have these industrial and technological capabilities is very simple. It's our people and the experience, the knowledge, the passion, and the ingenuity they bring to real-world challenges. And one thing about knowledge workers is that they want to be challenged. They want to work on things that are incredibly difficult and complex because they enjoy being part of something that is much bigger than themselves. The work they do matters to commercial airline passengers, our men and women in uniform, astronauts who are pushing the bounds of space, and future generations of innovators, explorers, and dreamers. Let me give you an example of ingenuity in action. Just 23 miles north of here in Slimar is Boeing's Spectrolab. And Spectrolab is the leading provider of solar cells, solar panels, and other innovative products for the space industry. Over the past quarter century, Spectrolab solar cells have powered more than 380 space flights, including hundreds of satellites that keep our world connected with communications and information, and is also a big help for the agriculture industry. Spectrolab also builds ground-based photovoltaic solar cells that provide electricity to the alternative energy market. And our team there has made startling technological advances. So I'll share one with you. We just set a new world record by creating a concentrator cell that converts a remarkable 39% of solar energy into electricity, at least 50% more power than a normal silicon cell. That can dramatically cut the costs of turning sunshine into electricity. And that's something that could benefit all of us. And just think, one day that might lead to the potential for homes to produce more energy than they take in. Let's look at the impact that our employees, retirees, suppliers, and volunteers throughout Los Angeles make to your economy and to the community. Today, we have a diversified footprint that's spanning commercial aviation, military aircraft, satellite manufacturing, and our newest market, cybersecurity. Our direct and indirect economic footprint here in Los Angeles is substantial. About 15,000 employees work in California, with the largest concentration in the LA basin. That makes Boeing one of the largest private employers in the state. Our major sites in the region include Long Beach, Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, and El Segundo. As mentioned, El Segundo is the home to the largest satellite design and manufacturing facility in the world, and that's where we have elected to headquarter our Network and Space Systems Division. Our commercial airplane team here in Long Beach serves a broad range of engineering disciplines. They provide design, analysis, certification support for every Boeing airplane model. And you'll recall that our numbers on our airplane all start with what number? 7, exactly. So all of those are supported here, including our newest entrant, the 787 Dreamliner. In addition to supporting airplane production, our employees here service more than 900 airline customers, providing airplane mods and upgrade services, material management, engineering and product support, passenger to freighter conversions for FedEx and UPS and others, and emergent parts manufacturing. Our team here provides 24/7 support to the 13,000 commercial jets that are in service worldwide and the 5 million people who fly on them every day. More than 54,000 Californians are Boeing retirees. You may know some of them because they continue to contribute in their neighborhoods and in the community. Further, we connect with nearly 3,000 suppliers in the state. Our annual expenditure for these strategic partners totals nearly $7 billion, which supports thousands of more jobs for providing our customers with key products and services and helping to create economic parity in the state of California. This enormous economic footprint doesn't happen in isolation. We need partnerships like the one we have with you to continue the development of our current workforce, which includes Boeing employees and all of the people that work with our suppliers, and also, and more importantly, to prepare the next generation of scientists, technologists, and leaders who will keep innovating long into the future. Our connection to you, the infrastructure that you bring, the school systems, the colleges and universities, and all of the nonprofit support that you bring enables the productivity of Boeing and other businesses that touch lives around the globe. At Boeing, we believe in lifelong learning. That's why we've invested more than $1 billion in our Learning Together program, which is one of the nation's leading tuition assistance programs in any industry. In California alone last year, we spent $8 million on college and university tuition and material. And to lessen the impact on the employee, all of that is paid up front by our corporation. So students do not have that burden of worrying about how to come up with that funding. We pay it up front so that they can continue to increase their knowledge and awareness in their fields. The benefit for that $8 million supported nearly 1,500 Boeing employees in California, whether they were full-time employees, but we also support part-time students through scholarships and also our Learning Together program who are pursuing degrees, professional certifications, and even just taking individual courses. Again, because the field of engineering is changing so rapidly, and how people learn, the education system is changing so rapidly, that we want to make sure that our employees are always on the cutting edge. They study engineering, IT, management, and much more. The primary schools that we do the most of our work with are UCLA, USC, Caltech, Fullerton, and most recently Pepperdine for their MBA programs and their learning technology programs. We have an enormous amount of interest in learning technologies. Boeing and its employees are active and dedicated members of their neighborhoods where they live and work, which is a huge core value in our company. They contribute their dollars, their time, and their skills. Our leaders serve on boards of dozens of nonprofits here. And every year, thousands of employees, retirees, and their families devote more than 10,000 hours of community service, volunteering their skills, their strengths, and their intellect to the community, helping to enhance education, the arts, civic life, environment, health and human services, and economic development. Last year, Boeing and our employees in Southern California donated more than $17 million, helping to drive innovative efforts to develop workers and our professionals and leaders who reside in the state. One investment provided 150 homeless adults with employment and preparation programs. Another program trains former gang members to install solar panels. Still other programs provide veterans with work readiness training and networking programs to help them secure jobs in transportation and other related industries. We also have a very strong program that links veterans to jobs within our company. We hold annual fairs around the company, and we work directly with all of the military bases around the nation to encourage veterans to apply for these technical jobs within the Boeing company. We're also doing our part to help build a better planet, supporting local green initiatives, which we know are vital to this state's viability. These are investments like the one we did at Compton Creek to build a nature trail, and more broadly by working to improve the environmental performance of our products and services and all of our operational plants here in the state. El Segundo, for example, is one of the most active electric vehicle charging programs in the nation. Employees there and across Boeing conducted more than 10,000 charges last year, cutting kilowatt use by 82 megawatt hours and saving nearly 4 tons of greenhouse gas emissions. More and more employees are choosing alternative ways to commute to work. To support our commitment to the environment and to help combat urban smog, we offer benefits from electric vehicle incentives to ride matching programs, to carpools, to payroll deductions for LA County's innovative van pooling rideshare program. Now, how for connectivity to productivity? As for education, an area that I'm incredibly passionate about, I could go on, but I would need the whole day just to cover everything that we're doing from a community perspective here in the state and in the county. So I'm going to just focus on one aspect of a very critical educational partnership, which is a great example of our connectivity to productivity. One of our greatest success stories on the education front is with a small yet mighty nonprofit group in Los Angeles called Iridescent. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Iridescent, but hopefully you will capitalize on their program after my talk this morning. Their goal is to connect schools and families in underserved communities with scientists and engineers from academia and industry, and to build and nurture these relationships to spark kids' interests and ability in science, technology, engineering, and math. So how critical is that? Well, I can tell you just from my own perspective that the engineering light bulb went off for me in 8th grade when I had a science teacher who was absolutely passionate about science, and I had never up to that point done a hands-on science project because I lived in an underserved community which did not have the materials and all that one could practice and really understand that connection between science and the real world. So Boeing has now stepped up to help, and the result has included a public-private partnership that's reaching school children, teachers, and parents throughout California and the world. And it's called the Curiosity Machine. Some 80 Boeing engineers are involved in this program, and the majority of them live and work right here in Southern California. So far, the effort has led to 25 engineering design challenges for use in schools, homes, and after-school programs. These are real-world scientific challenges, and kids tackle them using everyday materials, turning cardboard and string and tape and other small tools that bring science to life. Each challenge has a guide, there's videos, and there's instructions to inspire kids and support them as they plan and as they build, they test, they redesign, they reflect, and they learn. And why that's critical is, I don't know how many of you have been in higher ed, but one of the things that we know about children is that their brain is like a sponge until they turn about 5 years old. From age 5 on, pieces of their brain begin to close. And so by giving them the opportunity to experiment and to think critically when they're young, allows their brain to be affixed for more complex problem solving. So this is a very critical program, and it's a very critical part of childhood development as well. We have a brief video that will illustrate the power of this partnership. So if we could just run that video.
We love engineering. The idea of getting to kind of do science experiments with kids and maybe try to convey some of that joy we have from engineering to the kids just seemed really exciting.
Boeing innovates its products, but what Boeing also does is to innovate in the way we engage with community. The work that we do is so hinged on the quality of the engineering and the science, and yet that's so inaccessible because it is literally rocket science. And so how do you make that accessible to kids and to their families and to their teachers so that they understand how to translate these complicated systems into something simple and easy and accessible? Skills-based volunteerism is giving our employees a pathway into taking what they know and applying it to enhancing a student's learning.
To really work in partnership closely with a teacher to develop a 2-week curriculum.
We learned as much from the kids in the classroom on how to communicate in a way that people can understand that we can now apply to our regular jobs.
Curiosity Machine is a digital platform to help kids do open-ended engineering design challenges.
One of the funnest things was figuring out how to take common materials and make something that would actually work.
Family Science Nights, kids get a presentation from a couple of engineers who work to design an original design challenge. And then the kids and the family spend the majority of the time building.
I saw kids making design prototypes that were completely different than anything that I had thought of. And seeing the joy and interest that they had in airplanes.
Boeing has a commitment. Education is one of the biggest areas that we invest in.
We've started something that will last a lifetime.
Who was an engineer today?
Pretty powerful, isn't it? And just to take that to another level, I talked about how learning is changing. So what we've done now for 2 years in a row with a grant from MIT and some help from from Microsoft, from their foundation, the Gates Foundation, we've actually linked up with 4 universities, and we have what's called an annual fly-off. So imagine taking engineers from 4 different schools who have never met each other before, and for their capstone project, each of those universities has a percentage of an aircraft that they have to build. So these students learn how to design in a virtual environment, and then we bring them together for the very first time after each section is completed. They have to join the 4 pieces together and get the aircraft to fly. It is really, really cool. And I've had a chance to go to one of those fly-offs where it worked and one where it didn't work. And so these are seniors. These are mechanical engineers and industrial engineers, electrical engineers. They're all working together and they're all scratching their heads. But it's proven a couple of things, that innovation doesn't happen in isolation. It requires collaboration, it requires working across boundaries, and it requires research. And so this is a great opportunity. It's a new way of thinking, it's a new way of working, but fortunately, that's what the 21st century is going to be for an engineer. So we want to give them real world experiences while they're still in college, and also make sure that we're developing the future pipeline with programs like Curiosity Machine. The other thing that I'll share with you is that if you go out to Boeing.com, you will find that experiment plus a lot more. These are all low-cost kits that parents can buy themselves, and they can do these projects with their children. So there's no reason why any child in this country should not be able to participate in the annual science fair. So check it out. It's actually pretty good. So two of the engineers that you saw in that particular video are very committed to this, and so we wanted to feature them. They also work right here in Southern California. One of the design challenges touches on satellites like those we build in El Segundo. We have other challenges that help students answer the question, how do we communicate with satellites that hover 200 miles above us? So these are questions that we're now given to third and fourth graders. We want them to be able to answer that question. But the way that they're answering that question is through practical application. So they use things like paper, pennies, and popsicle sticks to make what's called a wave machine, a simple device that can carry a wave and record the wave's movement. So waves are nothing more than simple oscillations that go back and forth, right? You've seen sine waves. Many of you are familiar with that from mathematics. And they travel through air, through water, and through solids. They can carry information based on three unique characteristics: frequency, amplitude, and wavelength. So the students use their homemade devices to study wave characteristics and interpret what those characteristics mean. And by using their machines to send signals, kids learn how we communicate with satellites by sending signal waves like radio or microwaves to transmit information over great distances. So that's just one of the other design challenges you can find at Boeing.com. I have to do that shameless plug for all of you that have grandchildren or children out there that may be struggling with the application side of science. Please go and take a look. But the important point here is that our public-private partnership is really the driving force to productivity, because we're helping students and teachers and parents, not only here in Los Angeles, but far beyond, advance their knowledge and their skill in STEM, and also to increase their employability for the future. In 1916, the year that Bill Boeing founded his company, Einstein predicted that gravity waves, or ripples, in the fabric of space-time. 3 months ago, scientists announced that they had finally detected those waves. 3 months ago. So this is 100 years ago. And finally, 3 months ago, they detected those waves. Who knows? In the future, maybe a student in LA who built one of those small little wave machines will figure out how to use gravity waves to create new ways to communicate or to travel, or something that none of us in this room have ever dreamed of. So earlier I mentioned Sally Ride. Let me give you one more fun fact about Sally. So she left NASA in 1987, and she taught at the University of California in San Diego. And while there, she kept looking for fun and innovative ways to connect girls to science. Because, you know, there's been a long myth that girls don't think science is cool. Well, actually, they do think it's cool. And actually, universities are graduating more females than males in engineering. Yeah, when I started in the university that I attended back in New Jersey, there were only 20 women in the entire university. And today, there are more women outpacing men, and the university has tripled its enrollment primarily with women. So, you know, Sally's accomplishments have been long-standing, and she's been a real pioneer in this field. She also dreamed up a program at NASA called EarthCam, and that lets middle school students take pictures of Earth using a camera on board the International Space Station. So how cool is that? She wrote books, she's worked with programs, and spoke at many festivals to inspire students, again, really targeting girls to study engineering, science, technology, and mathematics. But like Sally Ride, every one of us in this room today, and those of us who are listening on the web, we all have a stake in inspiring our students. Because these students are going to be the next generation of scientists, technologists, and engineers and mathematicians that are going to be in this very room. They're going to be the leaders of the future. They're the ones who are going to dream and do and innovate and power the future of flight, just like Howard Hughes and David Douglas and Bill Boeing and all of the pioneers in this business today. So it's this connection that we have with you that is going to help us get there. It's our partnership that we can continue to foster that's going to help us to inspire this next generation so that they too can build something better. I want to give you a quick look at what the future could be.
Welcome to the world, 2116. You can fly across town in minutes or across the globe in under an hour. Whole communities are living on Mars, and solar satellites provide Earth with unlimited clean power. In less than a century, Boeing took the world from seaplanes to space planes, across the universe and beyond. And if you thought that was amazing, you just wait.
So in case you didn't catch it, that little canary yellow thing that you saw flying, that's your car in the future. So I was a big George Jetson fan, I'll admit, when I was growing up. But our belief at Boeing is if you can dream it, you can do it. And we've seen this happen over and over again with the pioneers in this industry. So I think together, through our partnership, we've accomplished a lot in Boeing's first 100 years. But like anything, all good things must come to an end. So what's past is prologue, and we now have our eye towards the future. So I ask you to stay connected with us, continue to provide us that great support and that respect and that